cards is a lifestyle. Sports cards and we live now. Jeremy Lee in the building and every guest that you ever needed. Sports cards after hours keep the hobby heated. Updates, hobby talk like you never seen it. Sports cards live and none could ever beat it. Sports cards is a lifestyle. Sports cards and we live now. Welcome to another episode of Sports Cards Live with your host, Jeremy Lee.
All right, welcome everybody. Episode number 189 of Sports Cards Live. It is Saturday night, June the 24th, 2023. My name is Jeremy Lee. I would like to thank everybody who tuned in last Saturday for what was an informative, candid, and somewhat controversial episode with deep value investor Brent Wire. Tomorrow night on the channel, 9:30 Eastern, is the PWCC weekly hockey auction ending watch party with Josh Madigan of the Hockey Cards Gong Show. And then Monday, 2 days from now, is the second episode of MC Mondays Live. So come join us for the auction ending party, which will be occurring on eBay. These are meant to be $1,000 items and higher. There are 58 lots in the MC Mondays auction this week. We had a great time 2 weeks ago, so please join us on Monday. Also, channel note, I guess you could say, Taking Stock with Dennis Zender, also known as PC with DPZ, will now be changing from being every Tuesday to every second Tuesday moving forward. We had another great episode last Tuesday. Check that out on the channel if you haven't seen it yet. I would like to thank the Cards to the Moon podcast for having me on last week. Had a great time chatting with Clark and Hyung. We had a really cool discussion. You can check out that podcast on whichever podcast platform you listen to. Again, Cards to the Moon, and check out their pod if you haven't already. Also, want to thank Bench Clear Media and Hobby Palooza for having me on earlier today for their annual Hobby Palooza 2-day content marathon. That was a lot of fun. I'd like to ask you to join over 400,000 people who have already downloaded the Center Stage app across both iOS and Android for quick comps and card management features. Their app is the fastest and most accurate at card shows or at home to help you price your cards, build, organize, and share your collection with your friends, and find other collectors to follow using their new social sharing features. They've announced some exciting new grading partnerships, so check out their Instagram account and join me, please, in supporting the great team and the innovation they are undertaking over at Center Stage, the Center Stage app. Also, use protection, everybody. Practice safe swaps. Veriswap is an app and middleman service that lets you securely trade cards through the mail. Every transaction up to $1 million is fully insured by their guarantee. To use Veriswap, upload your inventory, make trade, partial trade, full cash offers, and negotiate with thousands of traders already on the platform. Check them out on iOS and Android. And as part of a special offer through Sports Cards Live, your first trade on the Veriswap platform is only $1. There is a link in the description of this video. And I just noticed that they are now launching a promotion, an initiative to crown the Veriswap trade champ. It actually looks pretty cool. So do check them out on Instagram. Want to thank Leighton Sheldon from Just Collect. He will be joining us for the Vintage Spotlight segment tonight. Be sure to also check out hobbynewsdaily.com for your daily dose of hobby news and entertaining content. It's a collaboration of various content creators. And tag grading, the Discord service is now live. So join other tag collectors who are chatting, buying, selling, and trading tag slabs, sharing pics, talking shop, and connecting with hobbyists who like transparent and reproducible grading. And if Discord isn't your thing, you can join the tag community on Facebook. It's another place to stay informed on all things tag grading. Go to taggrading.com and the community tab to join either. You'll also find out first about the tag grading drops and even surprise flash drops. As always, I want to thank all of our loyal viewers and listeners. If you're not yet subscribed to the channel, please take a moment and do so. And as always, your comments and your question tonight will be in play. So let's get to it. Tonight's guest started in the hobby watching his cousin pull the 1990 Pro Set Stanley Cup hologram and ripping Upper Deck and O-Pee-Chee Premier looking for Fedorovs and Jagers. He went on hobby hiatus until 2016 when the Bobby Orr USA Topps Test card brought him back in. His favorite teams are the Toronto Blue Jays and all Canadian hockey teams, the Denver Broncos and the Dallas Cowboys, and his favorite athlete is Wayne Gretzky. Originally and currently hailing from Sudbury, Ontario, let's bring him out. Robbie Pastre. Welcome to Sports Cards Live. How are you, buddy? How are you doing right now?
This is awesome, Jeremy. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on the show. Truly honored, and I'm pumped up to start chatting cards with you. And thanks for that introduction. I'm like a prize fighter right now, I think.
Well, good. That's how it's supposed to go. Well, it's good to have you, Robbie. We've met on screen a couple times, had some good conversations. You've got a lot of interesting things, I would say. Like you've got lots of interesting ideas, takes on the hobby. You're building a great collection with is it your brother-in-law that you're kind of building a collection with? You got some great stuff. There's no doubt about that. And so we're going to chat about a whole bunch of things. Before we get into it, let's just say couple of quick hellos. We got Jake Dahl in the house. There's Brent from last week's episode. Good to see you. Lappers in the house, 90s hockey collector. Todd McDonald, Jeff McMahon. Welcome, everybody, to the show, The Tonight Show with Jeremy Lee. There we go. Thank you, Brent. So we're going to jump right, your hobby history. Why don't you just kind of give us a quick kind of review of that, maybe a bit more detailed than what I just gave, but just so the audience can get to know you a little bit better.
Sure. So like everyone else, Jeremy started chasing, collecting wax in the early 90s. Basically me, my brother, my cousins, on our grandparents' dime, running to the convenience store, buying any type of upper deck, like you said, O-Pee-Chee augers we could find. And then my cousin ended up pulling the Stanley Cup hologram, which to hockey collectors in the 1990s, I mean, that's the grail. That's the first serial number hockey card. That's the OG refractor. So then took a hiatus for a little bit, like you said, schooling took over. Then my cousin calls me up one day, just about 7 years ago, and he says, "Hey, have you seen what's on eBay?" And my cousin's a big time collector. He's got house, a bunch of stuff. And he said, "There's a Topps test ore." So then I said, "What's a Topps test ore? I don't know that." So then the wheels started turning. So that I got back into the hobby, did a ton of research. Obviously had to take that card off of eBay for my collection, and then dove right in, started going on Heritage, collecting everything from Ty Cobb greenbacks to McDavid's. And then, fast forward, pandemic hits, fast forward 2020. My brother-in-law from Florida is in town. He's a stud, great guy, and he does a lot of financial stuff and analytical stuff. And I said, okay, so he's showing off his crypto portfolio and this stock portfolio and some of the dollars he's making there. And I am showing what I'm doing with cards. So it was really the perfect partnership. His business savvy partnered with my, let's call it, card addiction, fueled what we call bottom of the 9 sports cards. But basically it's a family type of a business. And what we do is we buy, sell, flip, whatever you want to call it, mostly modern baseball, vintage, a little bit of vintage, but mostly modern cards, flip it and use it as a vehicle to try and curate what we think are the most historically significant hockey cards of all time. So we're in the process of slowly putting that together piece by piece.
And the cards, so you're flipping cards to generate capital in order to add cards to a collection that you want to hold for the long term. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
So you're flipping you're flipping your way into a collection for all intents and purposes.
That's exactly what I'm doing now. Sean likes, as he likes to say, that's my brother-in-law, takes some profit along the way. I have a hard time sometimes doing that, but it makes for some interesting debates, let's say, between the two of us.
Because you want the cards, right?
I need the cards. I can't sell anything, man. I'm addicted.
Yeah. All right, let's jump into the first card that we're going to talk about, and it's a big card, and it's a card that I know you're proud of. And why don't you tell us a story? I won't even say, you know which one it is. I won't even say which one it is. I'll let you say it. I don't know. Is it a card that you have with you? I don't remember.
I got it with me in presence, let's say, Jeremy. It's with me in presence, say, but I don't have it on hand right now.
Okay. Well, I'll show. I pulled mine out so I can show mine a little bit, but tell us about this card.
Yeah, so we're the proud owners of the 1911 George Vezina rookie card. I think it's the most historical Canadian piece of there, and there it is right there. That thing's beautiful. So we own the highest graded Vezina rookie, which is an SGC and an SGC 9. So you may think, what led us to pick the Vezina. So as a kid, everyone knew the T206 Wagner. So I loved looking at the T206 Wagner. It's that iconic card and sort of defines baseball. So I said, what hockey card defines hockey? So I've done some research, and I knew a little bit about the Vezina, but then started reading on PSA auction houses, and they always refer to it as the hockey Wagner is what they'll say. So a lot of the major auction houses. So it's, it has that Honus Wagner feel in the sense that it's a pre-war card. It's a tobacco style card. It's roughly the same shape. It has that same feel. So since I couldn't afford a Wagner, obviously I have to go to the next best thing, which would be, in my opinion, the hockey Wagner. And I could still remember there was a Beckett article in April of 2007. I'll show you guys the article a little later. But the title of the article, and this was Beckett Hockey, it says, the most expensive card ever to sell. And it was the George Vezina SGC 9, and it sold for a record-breaking price of $100K, and that was in April 2007 when a Gretzky PSA 10 was sitting at, I believe, $70K. So so seeing that article as a kid, that's what kind of led me saying, okay, we gotta track one of these bad boys down. So we were fortunate enough to. I lost it once. I can tell you about that too, but I got it back. So you said we're going to track one of these bad boys down, but you decided to track down the highest graded by a third-party grading company copy of the Vezina rookie from the 1911 C55 series. You tracked down the best copy that exists. We tracked down the Grail, the exact one that was in Beckett, the highest graded 1911, and SGC 9, and that's the highest graded across PSA. I don't think Beckett has any, but across all the major grading companies, that's absolutely the highest graded one. Yeah, that's the Grail.
And when Beckett reported on it, they said it sold for $100,000. So that wasn't you. Can I ask, did you have to pay more than $100,000, less than 100? Did you get it for 100,000? Yeah.
So there was a little. That's a great question, Jeremy. Quick little story about that. So 2019 Heritage Auctions is auctioning off the Vezina. I come across it. I'm back in the card game. I'm bidding on the Vezina. The Vezina is now at, goes into extended bidding. I think it's about 2:30 a.m. and it's at about $54,000 American, no buyer's premium. My heart's beating a million miles an hour. My wife's beside me. She thinks I'm crazy. Why I never put in bids of $56,000 on this card. But to me, something wrong was going on. This card sold in April in 2007 for $100K. Here I got a chance. The hobby's almost, taken off, hasn't taken off yet, but is on the verge of exploding. I got a chance to take this thing down. So I keep waiting to trying to wait this guy out. I don't know who I'm bidding against. So I keep waiting till there's about two seconds left, just trying to tire him out and then put in a higher bid. And then it got a little bit too steep. It started getting to about the high 50s, and then I calculated with a buyer's premium. So Christmas was coming. I didn't want to get a divorce from the wife. So I said, you know what, let's shut this down. And then I backed out of it. So I didn't get it, and I regretted it. Fortunately enough, about a year later, it comes on eBay. We reach out to the seller. He just happens to live very close to my brother-in-law. So my brother-in-law meets with him a few times. We discussed the card, and I told him, we got to close out this deal. And the reason we needed to close it out fast was that a Gretzky hadn't sold for a record. Well, a Gretzky at the time was still $400K. It didn't hit that 1.29 mark yet. So I said, we got to close this card out before there's more eyes on the hockey hobby and this Vezina goes through the roof and I'll never see it again. So he meets with the guy. The guy said he wasn't the guy we were bidding against because we told him about that in auction when we were arranging a price. He said he paid a little under $100,000 for the card. So we made him an offer over that with another card involved. And the other card is actually a Harry Houdini magic card, believe it or not, which I have here. We transacted the card.
And you got it done. So how does it feel owning I will agree that the Vezina is kind of, not completely, but for the most part, hockey's version of the T206 Wagner. And the reason I say kind of is because, you know, the Wagner card has the whole mystique of him wanting to pull the card from production and it being a short print, where the Vezina is not a short print. But aside from that, it is that card. And hey, I bought mine in 2007, I think it was, and it was the first like tobacco series card that I ever went for. So I agree with its importance, its beauty. And he's still relevant today. Every year, the best goaltender in the NHL is awarded the Vezina Trophy after this guy right here, and that's the card. And this is the copy I've owned for 16 years now. So, and
that's beautiful. What grade is that, Jeremy? I can't.
It's an EX5.
Wow, beautiful.
Yeah, it's
yeah,
awesome.
the color on it. The color is gorgeous.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So I do agree with you. Okay. Couple of hellos. Scotty Noble's in the house. What's going on? Good to see you. Carlos says hockey's the coolest game on earth. Mark Santucci in the house. Brent, you don't need. That's a nice thing about this, though. You don't need to know about hockey to follow the discussion. That's the cool thing, for sure. Carey Price, Hall of Fame, yes or no? Justin Bode, hey man, long time no see. Good to see you. Nice to hear you've been picking up some cards. Vintage card collector is Vezina in the Pareto. And very good, very good. Okay, let's move on. We do have Leighton's going to join us in about 15 minutes. I want to get through it. We got a lot of topics here today. So the Gretzky rookie card. You have some thoughts on the Gretzky rookie card, like Topps versus O-Pee-Chee. There's lots of fakes and counterfeits out there. Population control, the PSA 10s that exist. And also the signed Gretzky rookie you have. So I'm just going to turn it over to you. Where do you want to start with all these topics within the Gretzky rookie?
Yeah. Well, first off, I think, in hockey, Gretzky, Gretzky's it. That's the Grail card. And everyone does chase the O-Pee-Chee version. Why? Because Gretzky's Canadian, O-Pee-Chee's, Canadian company, and O-Pee-Chee is a more scarce card. So that's why everyone kind of goes after the O-Pee-Chee. But we've made some nice plays on some Topps. And I currently see some little holes in the market where there's value in the Topps. And I actually purchased a few Topps. It's interesting. There's actually more O-Pee-Chee Gretzky's totally graded than Topps. So there's about 9,000 O-Pee-Chees and there's 8,000 Topps. It's not until you get into the lower population count that Topps really takes over O-Pee-Chee. And I just did some research today, and that's in about a PSA 5. So as soon as you hit a PSA 5, Topps production pumps up. And why I say that is that a PSA 8 Gretzky has a pop count that's about 40% higher in the Topps, but in the O-Pee-Chee version carries 100% premium. So we've seen that as a market sort of hole or a gap, and ended up picking up a very nice SGC 8 Gretzky Topps and also a 9 Topps, just given that, the population of the Topps to the O-Pee-Chee, they're not that far off. And especially, it's really cool for some reason in that PSA 6 is like the sweet spot. So for now, anyway, unless someone grades a bunch, but in the PSA 6, the population count is probably within 10%. And, an O-Pee-Chee will carry probably even close to like a 70% premium. So it's just a nice way to collect Gretzky at a sort of a cheaper entry point. But the card looks, I like the Topps too, in that the blue looks different, right? So the blue has that crisper blue. It doesn't have the frayed edges. So, there's some advantages to the Topps. I know everyone's an O-Pee-Chee fan. Yeah,
you can get the Topps at a discount to the O-Pee-Chee. And I think, the O-Pee-Chee has always been more coveted and more valuable, maybe mostly because Canadians, who are the bigger sector of hockey collectors or segment, want the O-Pee-Chee. It's what we grew up with. But Americans are more familiar with Topps, and despite the fact that there's still probably more, and I don't know for sure, but I'm going to guess, I think there's probably more O-Pee-Chees printed and out there in the world than there are Topps. However, and that kind of, maybe there's more Topps actually, because it was made for the US market, but in the population on PSA, there are, as you said, there's more O-Pee-Chees, and that is kind of something that could catch up to the O-Pee-Chee and give the Topps a little bit of a bump relative to the O-Pee-Chee copy as time goes by. And I made a similar move. I've got a couple of O-Pee-Chees. I've always had O-Pee-Chees. I never owned a Topps, Maybe I flipped a couple along the way, but I bought one about, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago. And I bought it because I saw what happened to the PSA 9. The PSA 9 O-Pee-Chee Gretzky went from a $4,500 to $5,000 card to a $45,000 card by like 2017. And I thought to myself, well, now the Topps is worth about $4,000 to $5,000. I better grab one of those before it does the same thing. And I did. And then it did the same thing. So very glad I made that play when I did. And I still have that card. But I also think that the Topps is underappreciated, generally speaking, and it is a cleaner card, a better produced card as well. Let's talk about the PS. There's 2 PSA 10s, both Topps and O-Pee-Chee, 2 of each. And you made a comment to me that maybe the PSA 10 is too clean. And I don't know if you meant the Topps or O-Pee-Chee, but the 2 O-Pee-Chee PSA 10s that I've seen them both. I've held at least one of them in my hand. They don't seem like they are improvable, I would say. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jeremy. I thought the same too. So I haven't had the experience of holding both in hand like you have. That's amazing. Although, you can see some decent size quality photos when from the internet. I find, to me, they almost look, at least one of the 10s for sure, to me almost looks too clean. And why I mean by, and I'm talking with the O-Pee-Chee. O-Pee-Chee, as some of you guys may know, was cut with a wire cutter. And, as the wire cutter dulls, the O-Pee-Chee cards are more prone to fraying. When I really zoom in on that PSA 10 O-Pee-Chee, I almost don't see any fraying. It's almost like it wasn't cut with that same equipment. Now, I'm not here to, say that it's a sheet cut Gretzky in a PSA 10 holder, but I'm just saying it does look rather clean to me. I haven't, I don't have the experience I like you do handling Gretzky's, but I have seen enough around to know that, what's an authentic O-Pee-Chee or not. And to me, it's just kind of, it almost looks a little too clean. That's on the card.
I just wonder if it might have been like some copies of this card were the first ones cut before the wires or the blades got dull. So, there are some nicely cut O-Pee-Chee cards out there, but it does raise a red flag because we are conditioned to think that O-Pee-Chee cards should have that those sorts of rough edges. But no, I appreciate the comment and the thought on it for sure. Autographed Gretzky rookies. I mean, there was this legend that Gretzky wouldn't sign his rookie card except for his kid or his kids. When I think the legend was that he signed one for his daughter Paulina, but that was it. And then he had a couple of boys after her, and maybe he signed them for them as well. Then next thing you know, you start to see more and more signed Gretzky rookies come out of the woodwork. And I actually own one myself that was obtained by the cameraman for Hockey Night in Canada in the locker room. I'm guessing it was done in his rookie year because this guy had thousands of autographed cards. It's what he did as a hobby, and he had access. He passed away. A guy I knew acquired the whole collection from the estate, and I was the first one on the scene and was able to buy a lot of the good cards from that collection. And anyway, there's lots of them out there now. So what are your thoughts on and I mean, there's a whole other episode that could be had on autographed vintage rookies, but the autographed Gretzky rookie, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I love it. I mean, before, that was a faux pas in the hobby to have any type of rookie card ever autographed, whether it was, any rookie card shouldn't be autographed, like a Young Guns or anything. To me now, I think there's been a tendency, especially in vintage, for a real premium for an authentic autograph, hand autograph on any rookie card, really. So that's what I've been trying to hunt down and find. So I haven't purchased a Gretzky yet. You're right. I've seen there are a few. A lot of them are signed in ink too. So they're signed with like a pen and blue ink, some are with a black marker that I've seen. So I've just been trying to find the right one. There, some of them, depending on the type, I'm just trying to target really an authentic Gretzky that looks good but has his autograph on it. So I think it's pretty cool, and I think collectors eventually are going to go to signed autographed cards that are rookies. I think that's where we're going to be headed eventually. So I've been even picking up like Iserman rookies and lower grade signed Adam Oates, like some of that stuff. I'm a collector. Just to have an autograph on a card by, you know, a superstar is pretty cool. It just adds another level of collectability to me.
Right on. Yeah, I think you're not alone. A lot of people are moving that way. It was sort of taboo for, you know, most of the history of the hobby to get your cards autographed. And I have a few. I don't see myself moving in that direction completely. I don't see myself actually acquiring any more pretty much ever again. I've got the ones I want, but that's just me. And I respect that a lot of people are moving that direction, that the player touched the card. That's pretty cool. All right, we're going to go to a couple more comments. Brent says, I'm here. I'm watching, man. I'm here. I'm glad you're here. Goes on to say, you're here to learn. He's here to learn. The professor, first time listening to Robbie. Bobby Burrell, good to see you. Nothing like good old George Vezina, no doubt. Eric in the house, what's going on? Thank you on the Vezina. Willie T, good to see you. Brent says, I'm here to learn. I like that approach. Cage Lawyer Minion. I don't know if that's the actual cage or not, but in the Heezy for Sheezy, good to see you. Justin Bode got an SGCA Gretzky OPG. It's a beautiful card. The ink is amazing. Very, very nice. Very nice to hear. Carlos says, for Pareto reasons, I'd get a higher graded tops for the long term instead of a low grade OPG. I mean, I think that makes sense. If you like the card, that makes sense to me. Joe Perot in the house. What's going on, my friend? Bobby Burrell says the tops Gretzky also has the blue lines on the front, but certainly not as prevalent as the OPG. And these are just like, you know, he's just talking about it's this copy I have here doesn't really see them, but sometimes this is my autographed Gretzky rookie, but right down here, you often see these right there, especially you can see them. It's going to be tough to see here, but yeah, you can't really see it, but you'll notice it if you look at your cards for sure. Mark Santucci, yes, he's from Sudbury, Ontario. He is. Once a spiritual teacher. Bobby Burrell informs us no wire cutters ever used by OPG. That, and Bobby knows they weren't. It was blades, but they got dull. Anyway, well, that's another thing. But if there's anyone we can trust on these things, the history of hockey card production, it's Bobby Burrell. Mark says, whose area is colder and has more snow? Probably Robbie's does. Brent says, in-person autos are in a mini bubble. But that's, you know, is it a bubble? The problem I have with the word bubble is that bubbles do burst. And this is like, is it a bubble? It's like, or is it really just the beginning of a trend that could last a very long time? This makes sense. This isn't like NFTs or something. Forgive me, NFT lovers, stupid like that. But it's like, this, I don't know. Eric says, I love getting rookie cards autoed. Every chance I get, I will have a player sign their rookie card. Yeah. All right, let's keep on going. We got a couple minutes before Leighton joins us. You've had some transactions that you've done really well on, but you've also made some mistakes in the market so far. And there's one example that I'll get you to talk about. It has to do with a Gordie Howe 51 Parkhurst rookie card. Why don't you speak to that?
Yeah, so that was a mistake. We should have bought that card. So that was a case of everyone says buy the card, not the grade. This time I should have bought the grade, not the card, because I could have sold the card for more and flipped back and got a whole bunch more cards. But anyway, it was an SGC 9 Gordie Howe rookie. The registration was awesome on everything, except for the most important part, which is his face. So his face almost looked like someone took an eraser to it. You could see his eyes, but it just didn't look right to me. But here it is in a SGC 9 holder, and that's like one of the highest graded Hows there is. So we were trying to, at that time, we had a chance to pick up that card for around 30,000. And then I just got cold feet. I didn't like it. I just didn't feel that it was a 9, although it was in an SGC 9 holder. We lost the card, and then apparently it resurfaced about a year later at the Toronto Expo. I don't think it sold, but apparently the gentleman was trying to value the card around over close to 100,000. So I don't know if it would be 100,000 given that, but Howe did go up quite a bit since that transaction. So that was definitely a mistake at that time, because we could have just easily sold that card and bought, a really nice SGC a tau instead of having the 9. But that was one where, you know, buy the card, not the grade, sometimes could hurt you, so to speak. And I mean, yeah, we've took some dusting on lots of cards, you know. So we bought a Mike Trout Walmart Blue PSA 10. I think we set the record price for that at around 20,000. Now that card's maybe 7,000 or 8,000. At the time, Jeremy, it made absolutely perfect sense. Why? Because 2011 update Trout, there's 5,000 in circulation. At the time, it was selling just under $5,000. Here you have the Walmart Blue's got a pop 74, and it's selling, you know, for just under 20,000. So to me, that didn't make sense. I thought the hobby would eventually get maybe more, you know, sophisticated with the math on the cards, and eventually that would roll in and people would see value in these Walmart Blue Trout. So that the market corrected, let's just say, and it didn't correct in the right way for us. And that Mike Trout sank literally to the bottom. So I'm still holding that one. And yeah, we got beat up. Me and my brother bought Mahomes cards during the Super Bowl, which never to do again. But yeah, so we were drinking maybe some of the Jeff Wilson Kool-Aid that he made us. I don't know, with selling us on Select. But I really liked Select. They're nice cards. They're low pop. They're in 2017. We ended up buying some field level prisms and premiers. And I think if we were to use that market movers tool, we're like we're above the peak at what we paid on that. My reasoning at the time was, hey, Mahomes wins another Super Bowl, the cards are going to go up. Mahomes loses, still go down, but they're going to go up 30%, you know, into the next season. That never panned out, and everything sort of came down. I don't even want to know what those Patty cards are doing now.
And then you realize that when he won the Super Bowl, that everybody flooded the market with his cards to capitalize, and the value just went down. It's the opposite of what you. It
went down. Think. So So I got these bad boys here, Jeremy, up for grabs, man. That I don't know what to do with them. Maybe
you should just hold them. Maybe you should hold them and see what happens down the road. He's still a great player. You know, you talked about where you should have bought the grade, not the card, because you could have, you know, you would have made some money on that. And that's a fair comment related to what I believe is buy the card, not the grade. But when I say buy the card, not the grade, I say that for my collection. That's what I'm saying it for cards that I want, because, you know, I feel like whoever set the record on buying that card eventually, where you would have made money if you were the owner, made a bad buy. Like that was a non-savvy purchase by that person. So I do believe that eventually the eye appeal of the card within the grade is going to overtake the grade itself. Eventually, we're not there yet. There's still a lot of people who are all about the PSA set registry and just all about the PSA brand for their cards. But I think I think that the eye appeal is going to eventually. And things change in the world. Everything's cyclical. Things will change. I think we'll get there. So, but despite that, you're right. You would have made money if you would have bought the card in that grade at that time. So, all right, we're gonna get into some hot takes, and actually one of them we have is we're gonna involve our friend Leighton Sheldon from Just Collect. We're gonna bring you out in just a minute, Leighton. I just want to run through a few more comments so that we can get caught up. So. Brent says, sometimes making the right move still loses money. I've been there many times. And you think you're making the right move, and in hindsight, you realize you didn't make the right move. If it's really just a flip transaction, I mean, I've bought cards for more than I should have as well in hindsight and sold them at a loss. But I don't know that any card dealer, flipper, anybody who buys and sells worth their weight in salt. I don't know if that's the cliche. Actually hasn't lost some money somewhere at some point on a card. And if you haven't, you're lying to us or lying to yourself, or a bit of both. So I definitely think there's something there. Bobby Burrell says it was once published in Beckett long ago that wires were used for cutting cards, an error on their part. They used slitter blades. Very interesting, Bobby. And I wish I could remember everything Bobby's ever told me, because then I wouldn't say the wrong thing, in the aftermath. Justin Bode says the card market has got to be like the stock market back in the 1880s. That's why it's awesome. Unregulated, maybe. Colin Murray, what's going on? Sports MD, good to see you. Thanks for joining. And Bobby Baseball says one idea to consider is that both the card and the grade, the combo of both sets the price against demand. No, well, I think Bobby, I mean, listen, I'm sure there's cases where it does. But I think that not all the time, because there are people that just ignore the card and just focus in on that grade, and that's all they buy. I see Leighton. I see Nathan nodding. I see Leighton nodding. So let's bring him out right now and let him. Leighton, you experience that same sort of thing where people just ignore the card and buy the grade alone?
Yeah, well, I mean, just, as far as like the analogy to the stock market, right? I mean, aren't there some people who, no matter what they're told, they diversify? And then there's other people, no matter what they're told, they buy 3 stocks. I don't know what's right. I'd probably ask Warren Buffett. But yes, there's people in card collecting that clearly just buy the grade, right? And they're concerned with how it looks. The IPO of the card. And there's other people who just literally buy the card. As long as it's a 7, they don't care what it looks like. It fills the slot. That could be a set. That could be a team set. That could be an individual PC. That could really also be an investor that doesn't necessarily care or think it matters as much as maybe real collectors do. I'm not sure, but it's interesting topic.
Yeah. So first of all, Leighton, Robbie, Leighton. I know you guys have had some DMs between.
Pleasure to meet you, Leighton.
So one thing that I wanted to talk about with getting you guys both on the screen together tonight is something where. So I guess Robbie was watching the episode, Leighton, last Saturday with Brent Wire, a deep value investor, and you were making some comments about the Babe Ruth Sanella. I believe it's a 1932 card. Is that right? 1932.
I think you might say I was talking smack. It's possible.
You were maybe talking smack about the card. And then when I was chatting with Robbie earlier this week, he's like, I watched the show. I heard what Leighton said about the Sanella Babe Ruth, and he's like, I actually love the card. And I thought, well, perfect. Let's talk about it. Now, we are going to have, obviously, we're going to have a very open discussion here about it. But let's start with you, Leighton, because let's refresh what you said last week a little bit. And now that you know, because I primed you for this, I let you know that we were going to talk about this and that Robbie loves the card. Let's hear your thoughts on it. And then, Rob, you can counterpoint why you like it. And let's see where we end up on this, guys. So, Leighton, please.
Well, sure. Let me start by saying is if anyone wants to donate any of their Sanella Ruths to me, I'm not opposed to having any in my PC. I'm certainly open to donations. But if you're talking about, kind of getting serious and getting back to center for a second, hey, how do I deploy my money that's not unlimited? Right? We all can't be Hal Steinbrenner who collects, a lot of people know that, or Ken Kendrick from the Diamondbacks. We don't have unlimited money. So as far as I'm concerned, and I'm just going to throw it out there, right? Robbie, please correct me because it seems like you know a fair amount about the card. It costs real money. So in other words, I was looking at eBay. There's about 60 something examples of the Sanella Ruth, mainly at Buy It Now. And it seems like a 4 is about $1,000-ish, if I'm not mistaken, right? And so the card itself, what I think is cool about it is that it's more resembles art to me. You can't really see his face clearly. I do think that the colors are kind of neat. And if I hadn't been in cards so long and I just saw it today at a street fair, I'm like, wow, that's kind of cool. Put it on a stand, maybe put it in, my office. It will look kind of neat. Except the thing is, there you go. Exactly. So it's an attractive looking card in the sense of, it's a piece of art to me. You can't see his face so well, right? And it was distributed, and Robbie will be able to talk more about how it was distributed, but it wasn't distributed mainstream, if you will. And so my take is that if the card was cheap, buy it up. But the card is not cheap. And actually for $1,000-ish, I'd want to make sure that people, and by the way, do I own a couple of Ruth strip cards? Yes. Do I own a couple of Babe Ruth photos? Yes. But I own such a small amount versus the market. But Robbie and Jeremy, I'm sure you can respect this, but the way content is both produced and relayed these days on the internet, I want to make sure, full disclosure, I do own a few of those cards. I do not own a Sanella Ruth. Maybe by the end of today's session, I'll be convinced to buy one for my PC. But that being said, I feel like for the money that it costs these days, and I feel like the Ruth Sanella went up in price because the demand and the price for the Gaudy Ruths went up. Therefore, people turned to other Ruth cards that they could afford. But my issue is that it's so expensive even still with the way the market is. You could potentially get for $1,000-ish US one or a couple, meaning 2 potentially Babe Ruth photographs, that original type ones. Now, he might not be in uniform. He might not be swinging a baseball bat, meaning he might be wrestling a bear. He could be in the forest, who knows? But to me, that's such a cooler way to deploy my money as far as if I'm a collector, right? And then as far as if I'm an investor, even though I believe me know nothing about owning an art gallery, all I have to do is look on eBay. The Babe Ruth Sanella is not, hard to get. And if you actually do the numbers and you look at least from what I glanced at earlier today, because as Jeremy told you, Robbie kind of, told me a little bit about what we're going to talk about. There's like 130-ish, 133 to be precise, Babe Ruth Goudies on eBay across all 4 poses, including auction as well as buy it now. So when you divide that by the 4 poses, there's actually less available Goudies, which people, have said there's 7,000 the pop report and all this kind of stuff. My point is the demand's really high. And so all I think that's happened to the Babe Ruth Sanella is people have turned away from the main Babe Ruth Goudie cards or other Babe Ruths that cost a lot more. But if I had $1,000, I'd buy a photo or 2, I'd buy a strip card, and not because I like the Babe Ruth strip cards, but because I don't have to explain to anyone what it is. I don't like when you have to explain to one. I'll be honest, I still don't even know what the Snella Ruth is. And I'm sure after today's, discussion, I'll have a lot better information about it. But the joking aside, I just feel that you could deploy your money better truly as a collector, and I would enjoy the pieces more. But that doesn't mean that I'm right. It's just it's my preference for like what I would enjoy in my collection.
And you are entitled to it 100%. So I'm surprised that you guys don't know what this card is, because and I'm only surprised because I didn't know what it was either until I looked into it a little bit. And I as we say, the beginning of sports cards was like baking soda in the 1800s, tobacco in the 1910s, chocolate and candy in the 1920s, and in the 30s it was maybe gum, I believe, but it was also margarine. The Sanella, I believe, was a margarine company. So this, which makes me wonder, how big is the checklist? If it more than even one? Like, I don't know. Are there other Sanella? Well, actually, there is. It's number 83. It says right on the top of the PSA label there, Sanella margarine. So, and there were 80. It is number 83. So that's pretty interesting. As Mark Santucci says, it's a food card. Yeah, margarine being a food, not a food that I recommend eating, but it's definitely a food. No offense, Basel or whoever. But anyway, that's what I know about it. And I was also surprised how many were available when I looked it up. And when I kind of Googled it to find an image, hundreds of images loaded. So, okay, thank you, Leighton. That's what I know about it. Robbie, please, why do you like the card so much? Maybe your history with it and anything else you'd like to say.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the Sanella, maybe if Brent's on and Leighton's on, it's the opposite of the Pareto principle. This is the anti-Pareto card, if you will. But no, the reason why I like the Sanella, so I have because it's a pre-rookie, and we can get into that a little later, Jeremy, but I do collect pre-rookie cards. So, everyone Babe Ruth is 1933. Okay. So this is a 1932. It's a lower, it is a low pop card. If you look at the population, the Goudies across the board of all of them, like you said, Leighton, I think there's around 7K with across all 4 types. The Sanella is actually, when you look it up, they'll show 4 types, but there's only 3. There's type 1, type 2s, type 3s. Type 4, PSA has graded them, but they're actually a type 1. They just made an error on it. So there's actually types 1 to 3. So it kind of mimics the Goudie in that essence that there's multiple versions of it, but the versions aren't as cool, obviously, as the Goudie, in that the only thing that makes the Sanellas different is if you flip it over, it's the location of the Sanella logo. So if Sanella's on the top, and maybe I forget a type 1, if it's in the middle or the bottom, and then there's a little number written in the middle of the card on the back of it that sort of also dictates whether it be a type 1, type 2, or type 3. But the whole pop count of the Sanellas are I think maybe around 1,700 across all types. So that's what sort of led me to believe it. And your lowest grade Ruth is, say, you probably get a PSA 1 Ruth beat up for maybe $5,000. Well, like you said, although not cheap, a Sanella is a decent entry point. It's another option at $1,000 for a 4, and you can probably get a 1 for I'm assuming in the low hundreds. So I just find it's a nice space to collect a vintage true, not a true Ruth card, but a vintage Ruth card. on an affordable budget, really. And these Sinella cards are, let's face it, are going to be in the hands of usually a collector. So they're not going to be pumped. I don't think anyone's on their social media or Instagram flexing, a PSA 4 Sinella, right? So there's maybe a tendency, maybe for some more organic growth, you could say, if pre-rookies do become a thing. But I just find it's a sort of mirrors the Gaudy in that there's multiple images of it. It's Babe Ruth, sort of in the same era. Yeah, it's from, the downsides, absolutely. It's from a German margarine company, and it's written on German in the back. So, it's aesthetically not as pleasing, but it's still a cool entry point. You can even take it a step further. They have the Sinellas, and the real rare ones are the, I don't know the pop counts on those, but they're a lot less, is the Astra, which basically looks exactly like a Sinella, but it says Astra margarine on it. And those are even really scarce if you want to get into the weeds. So it's just, I thought, a cool little entry point.
Leighton, I got some stuff to say, but I'll put it back to you to respond.
Yeah, no, Robbie, I mean, you make great points. And as far as like entry point, that's kind of what I was talking about before. So I used the Babe Ruth 4 Sinella as the $1,000 example. Well, let's just use a lower grade Sinella. I feel like for $300, you're right. It's a really wonderful way to be able to enter the Ruth card market. And by the way, I think it's a real card. Make no mistake. It's just not one that, like, even if I had $300 and that's all I was limited to, believe it or not, you can go in like a Hunt auction or Heritage and you could buy a $300 Babe Ruth photo. And to me, pop count aside, because that stuff drives me wild with like vintage stuff, and that's a whole other episode, right? But as far as the collectability, I think it's great. Robbie, I totally agree with you. It's very affordable. I just feel like if I'm walking around with my 8-year-old son Crosby, who I was on the phone with earlier tonight, and we're at a card show and he has $300 and this is hard-earned money, I just know what I would advise him. Who knows if I'm right, Robbie? I would just point him. And by the way, you can't, for those watching, you really can't buy a $300 Babe Ruth strip card. So to Robbie's point, if you have $1,000 for a Sinella 4, yeah, you're going to be able to find potentially like an authentic Ruth strip card, right? But you're not going to be able to get a Ruth strip card for $300 or $250 or whatever the number is for a lower grade Sinella. I think that's kind of interesting. And listen, there's a lot of folks that like collecting foreign, not just cards, but right, if you step out of the fact it's a card, people who went to an antique shop might think it's really cool. Oh my goodness, it's this Babe Ruth card. It was produced in Germany. It's affiliated with Margin. By the way, I hope you guys would appreciate, I did do my research before today's call. I was familiar with the Sinella enough, but I didn't feel like it was really, prudent of me to be, sharing my Google research, right, and pretend I'm a Sinella expert or a Sinella snob, because I'm not. But Robbie, I really do appreciate where you're coming from on it. And truth be told, right, if we had 2 8 or 10-year-old boys and we were walking around a convention, neither one would be right or wrong. If you said $300 Babe Ruth photo, $300 Babe Ruth Sinella card, that's what makes the world go round, and really the collecting world especially. And I think it's super cool.
All right. Well, right. And let's face it, after this, we've got about 70 people watching right now. I'm guessing some of them are checking out what these things sell for right now. So maybe
there's a run on Sinellas. Yeah.
Maybe the card will enter a mini bubble today. Sean Reed here put in Astra. So that was calling out, as you mentioned, that there was another version or another label, another card that uses the image. He says 22 PSA Astra grade. And I checked the Sinella. It's under 400 total copies graded by PSA. And they've only graded type 1 and type 3. They've never graded a type 2 or a type 4 or whatever else there might be. So that's pretty interesting as well. Maybe the type 2 is super, super rare compared to type 1 and 3, if it even exists. But Sinella wasn't a baseball set. It covered a lot of different topics, sports and otherwise, I believe, just from scrolling through the pop report here. So interesting stuff. Leighton, was there anything else that you felt you wanted to chat about that you heard us talking about earlier, or anything else going on? I noticed you are indoors tonight. You did say you might be walking the streets of Manhattan, but you're in your place, so that's nice. What anything else going on?
Yeah, no, things are calm, which is great. It's interesting. I was checking out some YouTube content. If you haven't checked it out, they have a really cool channel. It's, I think, Chasing Cardboard. It's, Bench Clear Media. It's all about buying collections. And the reason why people have been recommending it to me is because basically they've been saying, hey, Leighton, you're already doing this. XYZ, ABC, right? You should do this or that. And so I really didn't watch it, but I was walking around a bunch today, Hoboken in New York City, and I was listening to their content. And so they had a recent video on tips that they wanted to share about buying collections. And so I'm not going to regurgitate, what they talked about. Check it out if you'd like. But I thought there was one interesting tip they didn't cover. And I feel with the National about 30 days away, I know this might sound very much like a dealer, but I really feel as a collector, because believe me, I go to the National wearing like 4 different hats, right? I'm a collector, I'm a dealer, treasure hunter, all that kind of good stuff. But as far as when you're going to buy something, and I don't mean like a discretionary purchase. You're going to go buy a pack of cards for $8. You're buying an autographed photo for your niece for $20 or whatever the case is. No, I'm talking about something, let's call it north of $100, right? Because we don't know what other people's money means to them. So if it's a purchase of $100, I know I don't just throw a $100 bill around buying something. So if you're going to be going out there to the National, and this is where, my inspiration came from, was in terms of the tips that were offered to me by Chasing Cardboard, buying collections. So even though you're not going to go to the National and you're going to be buying collections, I thought about at least what first came to my mind as I consumed this content today was this. When you're going to the National, or when I'm buying collections, putting aside all the chit chat, learning about all the good stuff, here's the deal. All the money is made on the buy. That's it. It's that simple. So if you're a collector, I'll put it in collector terms, and you have $225 for the whole National, which, by the way, if you do, you still have a great time. Just keep in mind, it's going to be expensive walking around. So if you're clear $225, and that's what you can spend, whether it be it's one card or several, you only have one chance to buy it. You can have many chances to sell it, but you only have one chance to buy it. And so whether it be at $225 or $2,000 or $20,000, whatever your budget is, walk around the National as a collector, as a dealer, as an investor, just understand that simple few word sentence is really gonna, even if you just pinch yourself, but because really, right, no matter who you are, you still don't have an unlimited amount of money. So don't get caught up in the excitement. But if you want to pull the trigger on that first item in that first hour, believe me, I hope I do. But I'll make sure that I'm prepared for it. And if I don't like it, I'll punt. I don't mind, if I miss it, I miss it. But if it's for my PC, it's different. I get a little more aggressive. But that's what I wanted to share for today.
Oh, good. I think that's really good advice. I agree with it, and I've got more things to say about it too. But so I'll say them, and then I'll let you go, Leighton. How about that? So
that's great.
There's a lot of advice out there. Well, first of all, this also ties into what Robbie was saying before with the Gordie Howe, the SGC 9 Gordie Howe rookie. He had a chance to buy it, didn't, and then regretted it. And sometimes you don't want to have the non-buyer's remorse, which is like FOMO pretty much, but it's FOMO after the fact. It's FOMO that kicked in. But what I was going to say about it was that a lot of people, when giving advice for going to card shows and the National, will say, yeah, it's a big show. There's hundreds of dealers. So when you get there, have a piece of paper and a pen. Well, do your first round and note all the cards you like and what booth they're at. And then you can decide where you want to put your money, and you can go back and buy the card. I'm like, no, that's the worst advice. Unless you're buying a card where there's several of them in the room, like common commodity type cards, fine. You can wait till next week, or you can wait till next year to buy it. But if it's a rare card that you really, really want, and it's a good card, like you're not the only one that wants it, you have to buy it when you see it. Because if you do that, if you saunter around for a couple hours and what am I going to end up buying? There's thousands of people in the room. Chances are someone else is going to want that card, and they'll be a little bit smarter than you, or just quicker to the trigger, and they will buy it. So my advice is, if you see a card early on in the show, if it's at the first or second table you get to, you might see a card you want more a little bit later, but it's a risk you got to take, because if you don't, that card is probably going to be gone when you go back to that table.
So Jeremy, basically it seems like you just gave everyone permission who's there on the first day of the National to brush people aside, push people around, because it's going to be tough out there.
Well, that's why I go to card shows. That's why one of the reasons why I like to set up as a vendor. You get in there early and you get first look at everything. I don't want to go to the National on Saturday. Everything, all the good stuff is bought up by now. There's circulation there. The inventory is turning over during the 5-day show as well. So there will be new things that enter showcases. But if you go in there on Saturday yeah, you don't know what you didn't see, so you're not going to feel too bad about it, but you're going to have a way better selection if you get in there Wednesday morning when it opens. So those are my thoughts on that. Leighton, thank you as always for joining. You guys can follow Leighton on Instagram at Leighton_Sheldon and at just_collect, and check out his podcast, Trading Card Therapy. Leighton, thanks for joining. We'll see you next time.
Take it easy, Robbie.
Take care. Pleasure meeting you, Leighton.
Nice meeting you as well. Take it easy, Jeremy.
Okay, let's pick up where we left off, Robbie, and talk a bit about. Okay, so you were talking about some deals where you crushed it, some deals where you I forget how you put it. You got dusted on or something.
We talked about we haven't talked about the crushings yet, Jeremy. We did. I do.
Crushings.
Sometimes I do make we do make some savvy moves. Sometimes.
Tell us about a couple of deals where you've crushed it, and then I want to go to some comments.
Awesome. So one of our record sales was a card we talked about before, Jeremy, was a Bert Corbeau. So Bert Corbeau short print rookie, we picked that up for maybe around 20,000, and within a year later we sold that for set a record for 42,000. It was an authentic Bert Corbeau, which is a short print run card. So that was a nice play where we took some profit and again rolled that into some other hockey. We did really well in the soccer market actually too. So we picked up, there was a lot of in the mid Kaboom hype or early Kaboom hype. So we picked up a PSA 10 Mbappe Kaboom for around 3,500 and sold it, I think, for close to a record around 20,000 for an Mbappe Kaboom. So that was a nice, some nice turnaround there that covers up some of our losses, let's say. And a lot of this stuff, I mean, has gone up in value, but we're just holding it. So we've made some nice moves on some Topps test ores, a bunch of Wayne Gretzky's, got in at a fairly decent price on an SGC 451 Bowman Mantle. So we've got some decent entry points on some cards. And like Leighton said, all the money is really made on the entry in cards. That's what I learned. If you can get a card for a good deal or it's just the right timing, you get lucky, there's less eyes on an auction. It's all about the entry point of a card for sure.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot to be. Now, I mean, you could pay high on a card and then it goes up in value and make money that way as well. But I think that, you know, that's not just a term used in sports cards. That's a term used in lots of businesses where the money's made on the buy. So definitely, I'm going to agree with that. Generally speaking. Couple of comments that have come in. Jake Dahl here said, why don't common semi-star vintage cards, why aren't they collectible? I don't mean sale value, but just for set collecting in general. And I think some of them are, Jake Dahl. Look at this run of 69 Topps basketball PSA 10s that have been selling for like $75K per card for players I'd never heard of. So there is value in that for sure. But as I think I discussed last week on the episode with Brent, like I don't know how. I'm just concerned that when set collectors, like full set, like of 60s, 70s, 80s Topps baseball, basketball sets, when those sets end up being broken up and sold, what are those commons going to sell for at that time? I don't know. There's, you know, Leighton does a lot of set break business and other people do too. But, you know, 20, 30 years from now, I don't know what those commons will go for. Are there going to be other people still working on those sets? Maybe, probably. I don't know. Decoy, though, responds as, I wonder if it's because there's less available media of many of those players as opposed to top tier players, which could mean in the future there may be more widespread appreciation of them, as anyone can look up a highlight reel now. And I don't know, like they're going to have to be brought to your attention if you're going to go looking for them. Cage here says that the Sanel is a beautiful card too. I did a whole episode on it. Great card. I also like the cash in from 1929. And Robbie, you referred to the Sanel as a pre-rookie, but Babe Ruth's rookie, I believe, is a 1914 Baltimore News card. So
yeah, sure. So so when I meant pre-rookie is predating the 1933 Gaudi in the sense it's like it's an earlier card, you know.
Pre-Gaudi. And I figured you meant that. Yeah. Baseball card curmudgeon in the house. What is going on? Bobby Burrell said many European issued cards like the Sanella were used by multiple companies. So the multiple companies use the same images. And yeah, that's I've seen that a few times now in my hobby travels. And then Bobby Burrell says the Bert Corbeau, the card that you were talking about, the Bert Corbeau is as close to the Honus Wagner as the George Vezina is, but it's close for a different reason. It's the short print from the 1923 William Patterson set, which, as Bobby said, is a landmark set. I agree. The Patterson set from 23 is a landmark set. It's got 4 key Hall of Fame rookies, among others, but it's got Bert Corbeau, who was a common player, but his was the card that was short printed so that kids would have to open up more chocolate bars to send in and get a bicycle or whatever it was that they could redeem it for. Imagine if the bicycle took 3 years to get or 10 years, how much trouble these companies would be in for delayed redemptions compared to right now. But Bobby does point out the Corbeau is kind of the key card, although the set is considered complete without it because it's so hard to come by. And like I used to have a complete set of that of 23 Patterson, but I never even cared about the Corbeau. I personally don't care about the Corbeau because he was a common player that means nothing to me. Whereas from that set, Howie Morenz, Aurel Joliot, Jack Adams, I mean, those are the guy, King Clancy, those are the cards that I own and I love owning. I have no interest in the Corbeau because to me, it's like the Johnny Moore from 86 Fleer. It's different. It's scarce for a different reason because of grading, but he's a common player. And it's kind of the short print or the rarer card based on grade. So, but in any event, thank you, Bobby. And but you do or have had a Corbeau. What can you tell us about that, or did you already?
Yeah, no. So I mentioned that. So I did. I did love the Corbeau just for that fact, the mystery behind it, right, and why it was short printed. I didn't buy it to complete the set so I could send it in and redeem the skates, Jeremy. But it was a cool card, and I remember seeing it at the Toronto Expo years ago. There was one there, and there was like a crowd gathered around it. So I'm like, man, that's a really cool card. So I ended up buying that one. It was a tough card for me to sell, to be honest. I didn't really want to sell it. That's where my evil brother-in-law, Sean, said, there's too much profit here, Rob. We got to take some off the table and move it. So we did sell it. So, but I will, Jeremy, try and find another one for the collection. So I regret selling it, and I don't in the same sentence.
Sean Reed wants to know, do you prefer the Corbeau with or without the hole punch? Did yours have the hole punch, or was it an unredeemed copy?
Ours was unredeemed. And it looked beautiful. It was graded authentic. And the reason it was authentic is that someone touched up the corners. But if you looked at it, it would probably be the highest. Like that was the reason I didn't like selling it. It probably would have been one of the highest aesthetically pleasing Corbeaus if someone didn't take some white to the corners. Like it looked immaculate.
Right on. Okay, cool. All right, let's move on. We've still got so many topics. So like I told you, we're not going to get to everything, but we're gonna do our best. Let's talk about. We're gonna go into the topic of my notes that I have titled as hot takes, and the first one is what you call the neutral zone card trap. Why don't you explain to us what is the neutral zone card trap and what do you think about it?
So basically what I'm saying with the neutral zone card trap is you don't want to collect, Jeremy, what everyone else is collecting at that time, because by the time you hear about, this is what the next hottest thing is, you've already missed a boat. And a lot of these social media accounts that are giving, here's the top 5 cards going up. Well, I don't want to know when I see the top 5 cards going up, I'm not going nowhere near the top 5 cards going up. That should be a trigger in your mind to say, okay, these are the top 5 cards I'm selling right now, because I guarantee you they will eventually go down. So it's more of, when people are selling plays, giving plays, usually by the time the play comes into your hands, it's very infrequent, let's say, that you're actually going to do well. I have done well on some plays that I've followed, but for the majority, it's the most, it's been more of our own ideas and our own sort of projecting and forecasting where the market's going to go that we really did well on.
I think you make a great point. I agree with you. As soon as you see a top 5 cards going up, they've gone up.
Yeah.
So you miss, you're too late at that point. It's informational. It's interesting that these are the cards that it's like when you used to get the Beckett magazine and you had the up arrows. Doesn't mean that they're gonna go up tomorrow. It means they went up over the last month since the last magazine came out. So
yeah,
that's all that means. And I think you're making a good observation there.
And it's just also, Jeremy, with like careful. Sometimes you'll see a lot of these social media accounts say, they'll post a card to insinuate this is what they're buying now to get you to buy that card. They just didn't. A lot of the times they didn't just buy that card. They're actually selling you that card. They bought that card probably 6 months ago, a year ago, but now they're showing you that they're buying that card to get you in, and they're going to move that card on, about 4 minutes after they post it.
That's called the pump and dump right there. I also was going to ask you for your thoughts on last week's discussion with Brent Wire, the deep value investor. Your thoughts on the Pareto principle as you understand it.
Yeah, so the Pareto principle, no, that was a great episode with Brent on. Loved some of his analytical reasoning and sort of bringing, mathematics and that into the equation. And the Pareto principle is nothing new. I mean, it's been in economics forever. It's, some people call it the 80-20 rule. We use that in medicine all the time. It's like you see the same 20% of your patients 80% of the time in office. Now, I mean, that's an overgeneralization, and I think that's the major fault of the Pareto principle. Is it's sort of a blanket statement. It's an overgeneralization. Sometimes it makes perfect sense, and sometimes it doesn't. And of course, putting and consolidating your dollars in the highest quality asset is going to be a good idea. Like, who wouldn't want Babe Ruth, Sporting News Babe Ruth autographed, signed on the eve that he called his shot, something like that. Like, everyone's going to sign up for that, but that's just not realistic for 99.99999% of the hobby, So I still like to collect, right? So how am I going to get into this ultra high end stuff? So I like buying the best, vintage card. I'm more of a vintage guy. The best vintage card that I can afford. And I mean, I've owned beat up vintage cards just to have in my collection that I'll probably never sell, but I got in at them at an entry point. There's certainly some value I could take out there, but no, I'm happy I'm happy to keep them. But that's why I find a lot, Jeremy, there's a lot of room. And like I said, we got into the Sanella, but that's why I like those off-brand rookies. There may be some room there to grow for those.
Yeah. And you know what? I mean, stick to it if you believe in it. I've had a few beliefs in the past that I thought something was underappreciated or just nobody really knew about it. And that I, picked up some of them. And then, a couple of years go by and I'm like, maybe I was wrong about this. And I don't love them anyway. It was more of a prospect sort of thing. So I'm going to move them. And then a year later, they become the hottest things out there. So, stick to your guns on that would be my advice. Let's move on to the next hot topic or hot take. And that is why you think Fanatics 10xing the hobby is actually a bad idea.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of see that headline. Everyone's kind of waiting for Fanatics to come in and 10x the hobby. I think that's a little bit of a scary idea. That sounds like a little bit too rapid growth. I mean, in my opinion, I think the hobby's already 10x, Jeremy, in the last 2 years, and it's been great. But also look at what's been going on recently. We're seeing cards, month after month. We keep saying, when's the bottom? Where's the bottom? I don't think we've fully seen the bottom yet. There's tons of hobby negativity. Before, everyone was making hand over fist. Everything was going great. Now every second post is a lot of negativity. Everyone's talking about card trimming. Every second social media accounts just posting stuff for headlines. PWCCs, basically essentially went bankrupt. There's a lot of companies have shut down. So we're seeing there was some rapid growth, and now there's just been a decline. So I think the approach Fanatics should take instead of 10xing the hobby is let's maybe focus on 1.1xing or 2xing the hobby. Let's grow slowly by 10, 20% maybe, so we can keep people in it long term, keep participants in it, have more of a slow organic type growth rather than a moonshot right up. So I'm just a little leery about rapid growth because I think we already grew too fast.
Slow and steady wins the race.
I think so. And I mean, really focus on, these kids, right? Kids are the future of the hobby. So we need, if I was Fanatics and, maybe get maybe they should be funding like a local card, some local card shops to have like a kids tutorial once a week or once a month where, someone comes in and teaches kids about sports cards and about grading sports cards, about trading sports cards. Cause there's a lot of good business lessons you can learn, using sports cards and kids. So I just think, more of a focus on education is probably what's needed in the hobby to truly grow it long-term.
Listen, I think those are some great thoughts right there. And I do think though that a lot of what you see from some companies when they're talking about growth is really setting the stage for, oftentimes they're talking to the public, but they're really talking to investors, and they're talking to future potential investors. And if Fanatics is going to IPO, and it seems like they're going to, it's really sexy to think that this market is going to 10x. Now, is that what's right for the market? Is that what's right for the, is that what's right for the early investors in Fanatics, the current investors, or is that what's right for the retail investors who are about to come in on the IPO? And is that who they're talking to? And I don't know for sure. I don't know. I'm not in their heads to know if they believe 10xing the hobby is going to be good for the hobby, or it's just going to be good for their investors, or just going to be good for the pre-IPO investors. I don't know, but I'll let people, I'm sure, are going to make up their own minds on that. So, but I'm with you. I think you make good points there. Slow and steady, I think, is a safer way to ensure long-term health versus. And when they say 10xing, I don't know that I've ever heard them say we're going to 10x the hobby in how much time. Are they talking about 10xing the hobby in 6 months, 12 months, 6 years, 12 years? I don't know what they mean by that. And that would be, I'd like to know that, because that would help me understand what they're saying, and maybe help you understand that if they want to do that over the next 10 years, well, then that's slow and steady for the most part. It's still aggressive, but it's slower and steadier, maybe you could say. Let's go to a couple comments. Brent says, Robbie seems like a collector and very analytical, a cool mix. Bobby Burrell says, sounds like Robbie is moving the Overton window on analyzing what card to collect next. Good on you. I mean, that's always a fun thing to do too. CC says 10x growth too quick at the high end might be bad, but 10x the market at the grassroots level should be good. Yeah, I like that. I like that comment, right? Kind of parse it up between where, but the thing is with Fanatics, they can't 10x the hobby for any card that came out before 2023. Like, what are they really gonna do for that? What they are actually, I shouldn't say that, because with all this talk about how they just rolled out these new rules for LCSs and some restrictions. I think and no, I don't know the ins and outs of that. I'm not one of these YouTube content creators that focuses on all the details of every news release that comes out from every company. But if what they're doing with LCS is going to restrict them, I think the LCS is maybe going to have to put in more effort into their single sales from pre-Fanatics, and that might actually help. That might help the pre-Fanatics cards that are out there. But I like this comment about kind of parsing it up. Vintage Card Collector says, even if the hobby doesn't 10x, I believe it will grow, and some of those people will move to vintage. Yeah, great point, vintage. I certainly agree with that as well. Scott Anderson, how do you feel about buying top tier cards over 10 or 20K 2 years ago, and now we're out there for sale for 3 to 4K? Yeah, great. I mean, as I've been saying for the past couple of months anyway, and maybe now is the best time to buy sports cards we've had in the last 3 years. Now is the best time. You're getting the best prices now that you've ever gotten since 2019. So 3 to 4K now for a card that sold for 10 to 20K 2 years ago. The real question to Scott Anderson to make a better question is, what were those cards selling for in 2019? Were they selling for 2K or were they selling for 5K? That's what I would want to know. Either way, I think now is a much better time to buy them than it was 2 years ago. And Bobby says, Fanatics used the phrase 10X when 10X was happening. Yeah, that's right. That's a good point, Bobby. Good point. Jacob Thiessen says, definitely the best time to buy for collectors. Buy more now and bring your cost average down. If you want doubles, yeah, that's a It's a strategy for sure. Dollar cost averaging your way down for sure. And Mark Santucci says Fanatics isn't allowed to tell the card stores what they can sell pre-2026. Right, exactly. And that's where I think there's a lot of opportunity for the LCSs that are not solely focused on this year's products and selling them off their shelf. Okay, you ready for the next topic, Robbie?
Let's fire away.
All right. And I got to let people know these topics were ones that Robbie presented to me because these are things he finds interesting. So the next one reads as follows. Why does the hobby value PSA 10 so much more than Beckett 9.5? You then called it the PSA spell, which is a term that I've been using. You go on to talk about left-sided bias, the psychology of numbers, and some other things. But we'll stop right there. Please explain what you mean by all that.
Yeah, I mean, I see huge value in Beckett graded cards, and it wasn't too long ago that Beckett was the titan in the industry, and I think it still can be. And it doesn't make the sense the premium people to me are paying for a PSA 10 over a Beckett 9.5, and the reason I say that is arguably people consider centering the most important quality on a sports card, and just Beckett has higher centering standards than PSA 2. Beckett centering standards are 55-45 and 60-40 on the back, and PSAs are 60-40 on the front. So Beckett's back centering standards are higher than PSA's front centering standards. So to me, this makes me take a step back and say, okay, well, that doesn't make it too much sense. So where I kind of like it is, and probably people don't, but I like Beckett 9.5s that have 3 9.5s on the card. But I like I find it's a good discount when the 9's on centering. Why? Because I know Beckett has higher centering standards in general overall, and their centering of a 9 is probably like a PSA 10 centering standard. So the card itself is really, probably a quad 9.5, and it'll beat the majority of PSAs. Now, I don't think the market clearly doesn't recognize that yet, but if you're talking about an example of buying the card, that or not the grade, that that's a nice little play in there. And I don't know if the market has caught on to that, or I don't think they will now. And we pay such a premium for Beckett black labels, right? So everyone wants the Beckett black label. We want the Beckett Pristine 10. And at the end of the day, it's the same graders that are grading these Beckett black labels that are grading these BGS 10 cards that are grading the 9.5. So we pay a premium for the black labels and the 10. So clearly we trust their knowledge, their expertise, their grading capabilities when it comes to these big cards. But then we devalue that 9.5 so much when it's the same grader that's grading it, just because their scale's different. And the reason why is, it's just the psychology of numbers. Everyone wants a 10. No one wants a 10's better than a 9.5. So our brain, when you see a 9.5, it's called in marketing, they use it. It's called left-sided number bias, and they do it with pricing all the time. So if you got a bag of chips or a chocolate bar, it's always going to be listed as $2.99. So your brain reads $2.99 closer to the 2 than it does the $3 mark. Same thing, $3.99, it's going to read, hey, that bag of chips is $3, not $4. So it always rounds down to the furthest left digit. So Beckett, by giving a 9.5 on the card, your brain automatically thinks, hey, that's a 9, not a 10. So by Beckett using this 9.5 scale has inherently set them up for this left-sided number bias, and people are devaluing their cards. So, and I think that's why we're seeing them now scrambling to revamp their grading process.
All right, lots there to chew on. The one thing that stuck out to me the most was when you said that we value the black label, the 10 Pristine, and we kind of put stock into the grade itself being that way. And we've seen black labels that are off center, black label 10s that are off center. That I think a black label Pristine 10 card should be 50-50 centered, maybe like off by a fraction, but nothing that you can really see without pulling out your micrometer, if that's such a thing. there's that, I guess. But I like your comments. I think it's the other thing is that we don't necessarily, we being the hobby generally doesn't necessarily attribute value to the black label pristine because we trust the grade of the card. It's because we want the black label pristine. I've never owned one. I never even wanted one. So I say we without being myself. But the greater we, the hobby. But I think a lot of it is just the brand that, people say the Beckett brand has taken a hit in the past few years. I think that's apparent, but the black label hasn't. It's still highly respected and sought after. And, whether or not it's consistently great, the grading is consistent, whether or not they consistently adhere to their standards for the grading, these are things that are just, inherent in human grading and hard to say that they always are. But let's go to some comments that have come in. Lots of good stuff here. Jacob Thiessen says Beckett needs to bring the price down to get people interested in using them again. I think, Jake, I hear what you're saying, but I do think that improving their brand would be better than bringing the price down. But I might be wrong on that. Chris J says, gotta pay the PSA tax. Gotta pay it if you are volunteering to. Yes, you do. On Sports Card Therapist Rob Gerard's show a couple of weeks ago with his guest, who I don't remember his name, and it was a great episode, a financial planner. He basically said, tax evasion is illegal, but tax avoidance is not. So the PSA tax, you can avoid that if you want. Brent says, I see postings on Twitter saying buying PSA 10s. People would buy a PSA 10 with no card inside. Yeah, I think that's right. The professor says that Dr. Beckett said recently that he only grades with PSA. Will he revert back? I am so surprised to hear that because I've only ever heard him say that he only grades with Beckett. So either he's done a 180 in the last year or the professor heard that wrong. Kieran Crilly is joining us from Northern Ireland, says, I'm pro grading. However, PSA premium will erode through AI grading, which will in turn destroy, that's strong, destroy registry issues. Question is not if, but when. I mean, I see things similarly. Eventually, I wouldn't be as aggressive with the destroy, but definitely erode, I think is true. Vintage card collector, I would disagree on BGS 9.5. Many are min gem, and I don't think a lot of them would PSA 10. The market prices show that true gems are high and higher are a good value. And I feel like that's what you were saying, Robbie, but maybe not. Do you want to clarify?
Yeah, no, that's what I was saying. So just the fact that Beckett quad, say, I've always liked to target a Beckett quad 9.5. To me, that's, the ultimate Beckett. But if I was looking for sort of a bargain play and I wanted, Beckett that had a 3 9.5s, I would take the 9 on the centering, knowing that their centering standards are higher. So it's than PSA, that's all. But yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I would go for Beckett quad 9.5s and above, absolutely. And I mean, every card's graded differently. Graders aren't perfect. You're going to see some 9.5s that maybe look like an 8. Who knows? Maybe they're a 10. And PSA 10s that look like a 9, right? So it all depends on the card. But if we're just talking their grading standards in general, I try to target that 9 on centering.
All right. CC says, as a collector, BGS 9.5 all day long as compared to higher priced PSA 10s. PSA 10 might be better for flippers or newer collectors who grew up in the recent PSA market. Yeah, I mean, it's a branding thing, really. The other thing that we're not talking about is the quality of the holder. And, PSA's slab is sleeker. It's the plastic it's not the best quality plastic. But the BGS slab is often cloudy and streaky, and the quality control on their slabs needs some improvement. And I do know I've talked about it with them, and I know that they're aware of that. So whether they do anything about it will remain to be seen. Bobby Baseball says, what if PSA created a black label 10? I wonder how the hobby would react. They wouldn't, simply because Beckett's done that. They will never want to be seen as copying what Beckett is doing in that way. And Carlos says, Young Guns are the most overpriced cards in the entire hobby. That's a big statement, Carlos. I'm going to push back and say probably not the entire hobby, but maybe a top 5 or something like that. But hey, we could talk about that another time. Okay, we're going to pick up on the comments shortly. We got to get through some other topics here. The next one, Robbie, is why off-center cards are actually great. Hot take. Why are off-center cards actually great in your mind?
Yeah. So, I mean, don't get me wrong, Jeremy. When I'm looking at a card, I love centered cards, but off-centered cards, and when I say that off-centered cards, I'm usually speaking more to higher end vintage cards when they're OC. And hear me out why I like them. That's the OC. That's when they're off-center. That's the natural state of the card. It came out of, it was cut like that. It came out of the pack like that. That's how the card was meant to be. Assuming, and this is, again, we're talking the perfect OC card. So we have a card that's OC, but it came out of a pack. I know it's probably not tampered with. I don't think, what was that guy that was trimming cards? Evan Mathis or whatever his name. I don't think he got his hands on too many OCs, so we like that card to be off-centered, sure, but I need sharp edges on it. I need the corners to be crisp. I need the registration to be good. And if all that's there and the card's still OC, and I know it's authentic because it's OC, then that's really your perfect off-centered card. And it really sells at a discount to like the 10 version of that card. For an example, like, would you rather have a PSA 9 OC 52 tops mantle, or would you rather have a PSA 7 mantle? So it's a bit of an extreme comparison, but that's why I think OCs are just an interesting point, because they're relatively low population. And again, it's usually going to be a collector that's collecting that OC card. It's not going to be a flipper. They're not going to grab an OC card usually to flip. It's usually going to be a collector, maybe a long-term holder of that card that sees some value, that just wants a nice looking card, and it's OC. So I do see some value there in OC cards, and I've got a bunch of them. Like, I've got a Topps Test Or 9 that's OC, a Red Heart Mickey Mantle that's OC. So I just see some long-term value with OCs, and I think they're really overlooked. But I have seen them gone up crazy in value. I mean, I had a Gretzky 9 O-Pee-Chee OC before the card boom. I could have had that for around $2,500. Now I see them listed on eBay. Now they haven't transacted and they've been there for a while, but they're just shy of $20,000. So I don't think they're they're valued that high, but they have people are recognizing that with the OC. So it's sort of a unique space.
Yeah, I once ran into a collector at a Cleveland National several years ago. Actually, maybe it was the Atlantic City National, like 2016, 17. Anyway, basically was very happy buying up OC cards because you get a great discount on a card that came out of the pack. That, like, a PSA 9 OC is a pretty nice card if you're okay with having off-centered cards in your collection, and lots of people are. It's not like everybody's all about centered cards now, although more now than before. It seems to be what's in vogue, but and they do present nicer. I would rather have a centered 7 than an off-centered 9 personally. I think a lot of people would feel, and I don't know if that's what you were getting at, but I think a lot of people would feel that way as well. Okay. Well, I think that's a good, again, we're not here to debate every topic. We're here to present some ideas, some of your Robbie's ideas. You're our guest tonight. And it's always nice to hear how other people approach the hobby. And that's what I like to do on these collector type, flipper type, investor type episodes, we could say. Brent does say, love this take. Everyone and their mom now just looks at centering and pays a premium. And I think that's true. Goes on to say it's contrarian, whereas Chris J says centered all day and surface. I'm all about surface over centering. Myself, vintage card collector, hates cards that are way off centered. And Carlos says, why has BGS not made a marketing campaign to promote the fact that True Gem 995s would grade a PWCC 10? Because they can't. You can't say that they would. They could not say that. That's why, Carlos, that they can't say that. It's you just can't say that. You can, but you're gonna get called out and torched, I would say, if you did. Bobby says, well put, a clean off center versus a well-centered card with wear. Yeah, if that is surface wear, I will take the off-centered versus the centered surface wear card all day long. That's how I would go. Brent says every flipper selling a PSA 3 on Twitter says dead centered. Yeah, you see that quite a bit for sure. Okay. What is Nikola Tesla? Haven't seen you for a while, I don't think. Says, what a wonderful stream to listen to in the background as I break a couple of boxes of cards and hoping my silvers and gold parallels will be at least semi-star. Good luck to you. Brent says the contrarian view right now would be to go after vintage, really nice cards that are OC. Yeah. So the one thing about that, though, that I don't, like you mentioned, Robbie, they're also low pop. Population, I don't think matters on an OC, a qualifier card. Those are cards that have like flaw, like I don't think the population helps their cause. I think because I'm not thinking of a great analogy right now, but I just don't think it does. But I might be wrong. Maybe the world will go that way. Maybe it will. So I'm not gonna. We don't need to get into that. But respond if you like.
Do you think it, Jeremy? I know sometimes in the hobby, people will say an OC drops the value 2 grades. So like, I think that's true in newer cards, but I don't necessarily think it's true for like iconic vintage cards. Is that what is that the rule you used, so to speak, 2 grade drop from an OC?
Yeah, it is. But I don't necessarily, I can't, like when I've used that term and I've been, buying or selling or advising on a card, I have to think that in my mind, I'm thinking about cards from like the 80s most of the time. I'm certainly not thinking about 90s to now. There aren't really cards that off-centered that I would need to have that discussion about. So probably more like 60s, 70s, 80s, I would say. I think that would apply, maybe even 50s. And as you go back even further, it's like it just becomes a different game, I think. So, yeah. Colin Murray does say that PSA doesn't put the OC qualifier anymore, so the pop won't go up. I still don't think that helps them. I don't think that helps them, but maybe it will. Mookie Chilson says, Jeremy said it earlier on Hobby Palooza, I love a nifty pinhole card. Yeah, give me a card with a pinhole in the top border that is otherwise a 7 that's now a 1. I mean, that's my favorite card. I came so close to buying a 52 Tops Mantle one time, and I wish I pulled the trigger like that, and I didn't. And you didn't buy your Gordie Howe SGC9. I didn't buy my PSA 1 Mickey Mantle 52 Tops with a pinhole that presented like a 7. It was it was from Chris Sewell's Blazer division for sure. Okay, let's go to the next topic, which you called it statistical witchcraft, false narratives that where if you change a date by a year or two on a data tool will change the story. Why don't you give us kind of round out what you mean and give us
statistical witchcraft. So what I was getting at by that was you can manipulate numbers to tell any story you want to tell or spin any narrative. And that's done all the time in the pharmaceutical industry on a daily basis when they'll try and present, a drug that is more efficacious and drug A is more efficacious than drug B because this. And when you start looking at the data behind it, you find out that, it's just the way they're presenting the data. And I have an example after, but some of the major sites out there that you'll be watching, they'll show card appreciation values, right? So you can, card ladder index, whatever. You'll see appreciation. And then over the last couple of months, you'll start seeing that they're posting this card sold from this date, and they're actually using dates that are pre-COVID now, pre-COVID boom. So pulling data from 2018-19. So they're factoring in that pre-COVID pricing, which, the card was low and then shot up. But that card, since say the COVID era, 2021, 2022, that card's actually gone down. But since it's gone, up so much during pre-COVID, they're still showing some great return. So it just makes it look like, wow, every card's up. But you just got to start paying attention to at what time frame are they speaking to. So, for example, the one here that I've written down is, I wrote you guys an example. So a Wayne Gretzky PSA 6 O-Peachy, peak market value was around 8K. Average, I think, was about 6K, but there was some sales for 8K. So you could now say, now a Gretzky rookie PSA 6 is around 2,800. So depending on the narrative, you can spin it either two ways. You can say Wayne Gretzky's cards are now down over 60%. So you make it sound like the market's crashing, everything's going, they're down 60%, sell your Gretzky's. Or you spin it a different way and say, over the last 5 years, Wayne Gretzky's PSA 6 has 3x'd. Well, wow, man, my Gretzky's cards just 3x'd over the last couple of years. So it's just interesting by changing a couple dates and which time frame you're talking about can totally affect returns on your card. So I just want people to be aware of that concept, that not everything is going up, and pay attention to the time frame and the dates, and some trusted resources. Make sure you're actually making sure the card did transact.
Yeah, no, you're completely right, and this is something that I've been, and not just me. I'm sure a lot of people. I don't know. When I say I've been, I don't mean it's only me, just in general, but a lot of people are have said, and I know I've talked about it a lot on my show, is that there's a lot of doom and gloom in the hobby. There has been a lot of doom and gloom for the last couple of years since the peak. And it really comes back to even what Leighton said earlier. It depends where you came in. Where did you buy? Did you buy at the peak? If so, you're hurting financially. You've got either you've been hurt financially, or you've got a ton of unrealized losses and you are depressed about the hobby. But if you didn't come in, if you came in before Q3 2020, your cards are up 3x, like you just said. They're not down 60%. You're still tripled your money, sort of thing. Take earlier I mentioned my Topps Wayne Gretzky card that I bought because I saw the O-Pee-Chee go from $5,000 to $40,000. I'm like, well, now the top is at $5,000. I better buy one of those before it gets to 40. The pop wasn't that much different, and I saw potential for the tops. So I bought one, $5,000. That card went up to like $80,000 in 2021. 5 to 80, 16x my money. Pretty good, right? Well, now I could say, well, now I've lost half my money. The card was worth 80. Now it's worth 40. I'm down 50%. I don't look at it like that. I was never going to sell it at that time anyway. So I'm still up 8 times my money. So like you said, it's how do you frame it? What are the parameters on the horizon? You're like, how far, as I zoom out a little bit, right? Take those charts you're looking at and go from the 1 year or 2 year chart, go to the 5 and the 10-year chart. Let's really see how well things are doing. So you're right. You make a good point. A couple of comments that have come in right now. Bobby says selective data presentation differ between a buyer and a seller. Yeah, we all have biases. We humans have inherent biases that are going to try and position our side of the bargaining table to our advantage. And and there's nothing wrong with that. But that's why you need to be educated. You need to understand the whole thing. Like you said, have trusted resources, have some tools at your fingertips. So interesting comment. And I'm glad you brought it up. The next thing that you brought up was, are sales real? Like, who's paying these amounts? Are they actually transacting? We need more transparency. What would you like to say about that?
Yeah, so I just what I want to speak to that is I just really question, Jeremy, some of the authenticity of some of these ultra high-end card sales that we're seeing. Like, are they actually transacting, and who's paying for them? Like, when I see record prices of, I don't know, let's pick on anyone, but Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, National Treasures, RPA, that's apparently a one of one, but it's not a one of one because there's 50 different ones. So it's actually probably a none of one, but that sells for, $100,000 or $50,000, whatever the price may be. I just don't know if there's an end buyer there or there's an end collector, or is it just a few people, maybe more than a few people in the hobby buying and selling their own cards to basically create if this National Treasures Joe Burrow is worth this much, this means, a Tua has to be worth this much. So are they just sort of buying and flipping their own cards, trying to create a false narrative to show that that's what these cards are? Are these cards actually transacting? And I don't think so. And the reason is, who could possibly think that putting, a few $100,000 in a National Treasures Burrow or Herbert rookie is possibly a sound investment when you have a Joe Montana that has one iconic rookie card that is valued at, what's a PSA 10 go for? Maybe around 60K. So how could if a Montana rookie PSA 10 is 60K, who could possibly think buying Joe Burrow's National Treasures, RPAs, Herberts, whatever you want to call them, for, anything even close to that amount is a sound investment? No one is. There's no way that they're going to be holding these cards long term. So I like a little bit more transparency. And what I mean by that is, okay, I know Patrick Bet-David bought the Gretzky for $1.29 million and sold it to someone for $4 million. I get it. Who else is bought? Jeff Wilson, right? He said he's bought I know he said at one point he bought a Griffey 1010 auto for around 10 grand. Okay, he's a holder of that card. And then he owns that out of Curry RPA out of 25 that he sold a bunch of Gaudis and Bowmans for, which I don't think was a great idea, but hey. So I just like to know, it's nice to know who owns sometimes these high-end cards. So there's some transparency. Cage from Luca Tigers and Bronze, he talks about him buying a Scoring Kings. I forgot what he paid for it, but I think he paid maybe 18,000 for it at the time. He also bought a rare Peyton Manning BVG, I think a BVG 10 for a large sum of money. So it's just kind of nice putting sometimes a face. I don't need to know the price, but I just want a face of who's actually buying these cards, and are they actually transacting, or are they just circling with a few hands and we're playing a merry-go-round of cards here?
Or are they fake sales that people are just doing to pump up value? Like, I'll talk about one I remember. This was at the 2021 National. So the first one after the pandemic, right? 2021. Yeah. And there was this big, a big event at one of the booths because these guys bought the Patrick Mahomes Shield 1 of 1 for, I think it was $4.2 million. And listen, I was very excited. I was like, oh, that's amazing. But as you think about it, like, if it was me, if I was the buyer, I would be embarrassed that I just spent $4.2 million on a Patrick Mahomes Shield card. Personally, even back then, I'd be embarrassed. There's no way I would want anyone to know. I would keep that secret forever because I would think I wouldn't want anyone to know I don't want to, like, these guys could be watching right now. So I don't want to say, but you get what I'm saying. Like, I would not have been making a big deal about it unless I had some sort of strategy in marketing that card and, bigger thoughts about maybe it's going to help blow up the whole hobby and the rest of my inventory. And maybe that was one of the card transactions that happened when the hobby was 10xing and booming in 2021. But then you also ask yourself, like, yeah, you'll see people have shown checks. I can write out a check. I can write you a check right now for $1 million, Robbie. Doesn't mean I'm going to give it to you. Doesn't mean I can give it to you. Doesn't mean that you're not going to give it back to me. Doesn't mean that I've only got $10 in the account. You can't cash it anyway. Like, so I don't know. You have to be skeptical on some of these things at times and kind of ask yourself, what do they have to gain by doing this? And also, would anybody in their right mind actually spend $4.2 million on a prospect card like that? But I guess the answer is yes, people do. We saw that Jason Dominguez card sell last year for over $500,000. The guy had never played a game before. And you're thinking to yourself, like, some people just have money to burn, or they just like the headlines or whatever it is. So yeah, I think, but you say we need more transparency. This isn't the regulated market. So I don't know that we're ever going to get it, fully. And that's just unfortunate. But buyer beware, tread carefully, do your research, and buy cards at prices that you are comfortable with, and just be careful. Watch the hype around things. Decoy Card said, if you come into the hobby during the COVID boom, or if you came in during the COVID boom, it's like becoming a fan of a sports team as they're winning back-to-back championships. If the team makes the second round, they freak out. Yeah, and you're mad. Simon says, my glass is always half full. Thumbs up. I appreciate that, Simon, but my glass is only, it's not always half full. I appreciate that. I do have a positive outlook on the hobby. I love the hobby. I always have. But he put this comment up when I was saying about my Gretzky. Like, if you came in, you got to zoom out and look back prior to the pandemic. I have a glass that my glass was manufactured before the pandemic. So my glass is half full. Like, I'm not hurt by the market crashing. So my audience has to keep that in mind too. That's partially why. If you are in my audience and you came in 2021, you might find it hard to believe that I love this hobby so much. But you have to then ask the question, why does he like it so much? And why is his glass always half full? Okay. Any comments on any of that so far, Robbie, before I go on to the next comment?
No, that's right. And again, it's just my take on it. It just seems a little suspect to me. I don't know. Maybe there's a lot of people, I mean, clearly with a lot of money, but I think there could be better ways to deploy that money. I don't know.
Yeah, well, fair for sure. Brent says Card Ladder will say record sale for a 9.5 of a Giannis if it hadn't sold since 2019, but yet a BGS 9 might have sold for more 6 months before. And that's true. I see this all. I get their daily email. You get their top 3 record-breaking sales. But that's not wrong. What they are, because their system is really built by the grade, not the card itself. So if the record was for a 9.5, if a 9.5 broke a record, but a 9 might have sold for more 6 months ago, what Brent is saying is that the 9 may have sold for more 6 months ago and the market might have coming down, yet the 9.5 broke a record. I think the takeaway here is that if you are making purchasing decisions based on the Card Ladder daily email that comes out or their Instagram account with these record-breaking sales, don't get the rest of the information. Their service, their app, you can go in and then you can switch between the different grades and look at the sales history and get a more rounded picture. It's like, don't just rely on 2 data points or 3 data points. Get yourself as many data points as you can to make a better, more well-rounded decision. And Bobby Burrell says, way to take on this question, Robbie, on the transparency of sales and that sort of thing. Okay, let's go to the next topic we have. See, Robbie, I told you this would go by super fast. We're down to 13 minutes left, okay? And I told you it'd go by fast. And we wouldn't get to everything, but that's okay. When will card prices rise again? That's something that you were kind of asking the question. And I think, as we both know, we don't know when they're going to rise again, but we can look for signs or events, like catalyst type events, that could move it. So please, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, with that one, Jeremy, I don't know what the next big catalyst is going to be that's going to make the market move. I mean, everyone's talking about fanatics, but what are they really going to, what are they really going to do? Are they just going to turn on the printing press, start printing a ton of cards, overprint cards, and people are going to get into that, and then the whole market's going to go up? I don't know. Is there going to be, everyone was talking about the card market's going to boom because institutional investors are coming in. I don't know where these institutional investors are right now, or are they coming? It's just right now in cards, I just be really cautious in that it's hard to make a return right now on cards, because the easiest way before in the past always, as Leighton and you said, has been the entry point. Well, the entry point is pretty high, and maybe if we get to pre-pandemic levels of prices, that's where we can get that entry point. During COVID, any card was going up. It's like throwing a card at a dart at a dartboard. You pick any card, next month, boom, it's going up. Or, back in the good old days, you player performance. A player goes on a deep playoff run, has a crazy game, boom, their cards spike. Then there was everyone, buy in the off season and sell into the season. There was always that play. Now, everything that I just mentioned there has really no effect on card player performance. Nothing. The only real way now is maybe prospecting, I guess, which I do a little bit of, but not too much. And I get it. It's fun. We all want to be right on a prospect, but prospecting can get a little bit risky, especially when you start doing some of these Bowman, these high-end Bowman cards. I just think overall the card market ran like any other market runs hot, and it's pulled back and it's coming down, and it may be a few years before we eventually see some total steady state. But I don't really have the answer to that.
No, I wouldn't expect you to, but it's still nice. It's fun, and it's part of the hobby is the past, the present, and the future for a lot of us. So it's still fun to talk about and to even kind of hash out what some signs might be that the hobby will grow and will, Fanatics is a marketing machine. Like, a lot of people are hating on Fanatics, especially after this recent communication went out to all the card shops about how they're going to control the sale of product and try and have some control over card shop business. And what I've heard, I've only heard bits and pieces. And again, I don't really care enough about it, because my thought is, if I'm an LCS owner and I'm selling Fanatics product, I have to adapt. Number one, I can bitch and complain about it all I want, but I'd rather be productive and adaptive and pivot if I have to, and just make it work for me and become creative and find ways. And again, also consider that there's a whole 120 years of cards from before Fanatics that they don't have any control over, I don't think. So, but they are a marketing machine, and they are going to bring more collectors into the hobby. I believe that. Like, as Michael Rubin or Mike Mahan said in their investor conference, or some clip I saw recently, is that, they believe that any sports fan that will buy a hat or a jersey or a pennant or a ball or a puck at a sporting event is a potential collector. And they're probably the best entity out there to convert those sports fans into collectors. So if they can do that, if they don't, even if they, like you said, if they 50% increase the hobby, that's a ton of more people in our hobby. We don't have to 10x. Like, I don't think we have to. For Fanatics IPO purposes, maybe they do need to 10x to get their valuation. But for you and me, the hobbyist, 50% is great for the future of our collections too. So the Fanatics is an indicator that the hobby will grow, I think, despite the issues that we see on people having on social media about how they're destroying the LCS. Well, let's see what happens. Give it a couple of years and see if they really do or don't. Okay. We wanted to do a card battle. We basically wanted to show some cards that we both have copies of, and just a bit of that. Before we do that, I'm going to go to just a couple comments that I have selected here. Simon says the easiest way to spot a fake sale is if it gets relisted. An auction house doesn't get paid on unpaid sales, and many of these cards don't get relisted, which I agree is crazy. I think I'm following that. And then there was a follow-up somewhere, which I can't find now. I'm going to read this one again out loud. The easiest way to spot a fake sale is if it gets relisted. So yeah, that's also, like, I do know consignment sellers who, because they want to pay their consigners out as fast as possible. So if their buyers don't pay within 4, 5, 6, 7 days, they cancel the listing and relist it. So that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a fake sale. It just means that it didn't get paid according to terms, and it's relisted. So beware of that's happening legitimately. But he goes on to say an auction house doesn't get paid on unpaid sales, and many of these cards don't get relisted. So I don't understand. Sorry, Simon, I'm not understanding what you're trying to say there, what you're insinuating. But if you want to clarify, please do. Nikola Tesla says, grading is so subjective. I've been telling those new to the hobby, buy the card, not the grade. It's becoming cliche, but I think it's a worthy thing to be telling people. I like that for sure. Nicola says, baseball prospecting is so difficult and time consuming. And you alluded to that earlier, Robbie. Not for me. You will not see me prospecting on baseball or any other sport. The odd time I'll pick up a couple cards, but I'm not putting thousands of dollars into it. Maybe a few hundred at best, just to have a card of a player that I think is going to be good, so I can enjoy their coming out, their turning into stars. I don't need it to mean I make money. I'm happy also knowing that I got it right. I picked the right player sometimes. That's kind of nice too. Colin Murray says, stick to raw vintage cards. The prices are not coming down. Unlikely that they will. Some might, but not all for sure. Some certainly won't. And more comments coming through here. Carlos says Fanatics will turn LCS stores into Apple stores, which is a good thing. The LCS stores that do not want to follow the rules will focus on selling single cards, which is fantastic for the hobby. Yeah, I'm good with that. I'm good with that. Again, I go into card shops. I don't really look at the wax on the walls. I'm looking at the singles. I'm going. My first question when I go to my guy here, Eastridge Hobbies, is, Mike, buy any new collections, any new singles in the showcases? He'll say, yeah. And I'm like, all right, let's get there. I glance up at the wax to see what new products are out and what and to see these prices, which are like, oh my God, still. That's what I look at. Tip of the mint. Better late than never. Good to see you. Thank you for dropping by. Bobby Burrell says the prices had to come down so fanatics can increase new collectors. Yeah, 100% agree with that. Simon says a bunch of these cards still selling crazy prices aren't being relisted, which suggests people are actually spending 5 or 6 figures on these Joe Burrow RPAs and those types of cards. Yeah, there's always going to be people that want the hottest thing today. They don't care. That's always going to happen. Always going to happen. And he says, look, when someone doesn't pay on eBay, I just let it go and relist it. Not to mention eBay has had a feature where you could offer the second chance offer. Okay, Robbie, we're gonna go straight to showing some cards. So what we know what we were gonna show. I pulled out some cards. You pulled out some cards. Let's and I always get the feedback from the audience that they want to see more cards. So let's show off some cards. Should we? How do you want to go? How do you want to do this?
Your show, Jeremy. I'll follow the lead, man. You show me what you got here.
Well, I pulled out. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I got 11 cards out. I already showed the Vezina early in the show.
All right,
my excellent condition Vezina and a PSA 5 holder because you own the SGC 9, which is the highest graded copy that exists. And there's the Beckett magazine with your card from before you owned it.
That's the card before I owned it from April 2007. So that's the exact card that we owned, safely tucked away in a Canadian vault, not to resurface unless it goes to the Hockey Hall of Fame. So there it is.
Right on. All right. Well, you got the SGC 9. Mine's a PSA 5. I'm as happy. I'm as happy as I can be with this as I would be with that one. I say that genuinely. Like,
yeah, I got.
Also, because I've owned this for so long, it's like I'm attached to this copy. You know,
I have a beat up one that I treasure too. So I love that card.
Right. And if anyone hasn't noticed, you can now see our Instagram handles right under our names in our screens there. So if you're not following Robbie on Instagram and you'd like to, at BOT9th Cards and myself at JLee_sports cards live. All right. Next one. We talked a lot about Honus Wagner earlier in the show. Did you pull out a Wagner card to show?
I do, Jeremy. I got one here.
Let's see it.
What I have here is the 1910 American Caramel Wagner. I don't know if you guys could see that.
So do I.
So I love this card, Jeremy, just because it's, that similar T206 image to me. And then I also have a thing I like blue background cards. So that's why I like the Mantles. I like the Gretzky, the Walmart blue. And this one happens to be blue. So that's why I really like it. This one here is an SGC3. It's got some rounded corners. It's kind of weird too. It looks like they're wearing lipstick on them, Jeremy, on the cards or something.
Well, let's put them up beside each other, kind of, because it does kind of look like he's wearing some lipstick. It is hard to see cards on this in this studio, but yeah, you've got your 3. When did you pick it up?
This one we picked up, I believe, I want to say. This one here would be probably 2019, Jeremy, 2020.
I bought this in, I think, 2013. This came from Robert Edward Auctions way back then, about 10 years ago. I bought this card, and I bought it because I don't think I'll ever own a T206 Wagner, and I like the blue background. I like this image of him kind of better than I do the T206, and it's just much more affordable, So there we go.
Sorry, Jeremy. What grade is yours?
It's a PSA 2. It's a very nice 2.
Yeah,
I feel it's got some staining in the bottom left corner here that not a ton. Like really, my finger right now is covering all of it. So it's not a huge. It's not like the whole lower left quadrant. It's just that little bit. But that's it. The back off centered. Not obviously. It's got some wear. Got some issues there. But there's all the.
That's a great looking too.
The print is there. Yeah, really nice card. All right, next up, we were gonna. Do you have your C56 series with you? I said we're gonna pull out.
I got the big guys out of that set. Not the whole set. I do have the whole set, but I got the big guys.
So, okay. So because I told you we were going to pull out cards number 8, 12, 15, and 36.
Yes.
And so let's, now cards number 8 and 12 are both Art Ross. And Art Ross, it's like Vezina, and a pioneer of the sport. And every year in the NHL, the player who scores the most points in the league gets the Art Ross trophy. And Art Ross actually has 2 cards in the very first set of hockey cards ever, the Imperial Tobacco C56 series. 2 cards number 8 and card number 12. And these are my 8 and 12. My number 8 is a PSA 4, and my number 12 is a 3.5. Same player. Let's see yours.
Beautiful. So these ones here are Beckett graded, Jeremy. So they are if you could see them, 1.5s.
Yep.
So these are both 1.5s. And the reason I really like these is I think the front's really, the registration, the color, it's awesome. But the problem with my whole set with these is the backs, because I guess these were often put in scrapbooks. So the backs have this little bit of wear there. So you can see that little dot right there. And then on some, it gets worse. Like this one here, my other Art Ross, it gets worse. So it's like it's peeled out of that scrapbook. So, that brings down the value. But just looking at the card head on front ways, it looks obviously a lot nicer than a 1.5.
So the backs of mine are all there, but you can see, especially on this one, it's really dark at the top. It's almost like these cards were exposed or a smoker.
Okay.
But overall, listen, I don't need my cards from 1910 to look like they were just pack pulled. I want them to show their age, and these ones do that beautifully. So these are the 2 Art Ross, two rookie cards in the same set for Art Ross. And then you got card number 15, Cyclone Taylor. So this is my copy, which is a nice high grade for the era, a PSA 5. Let's see yours.
I'm coming in at a 1.5 here again, Jeremy, with that same set. My whole set's probably a 1.5. Again, the front looks good, and then I'm missing on the back here a Cyclone Taylor that you can see that's where it loses it.
Yeah.
But
again, it's actually really nice. It's not darkened like the 2 especially like the 1 Art Ross. And then finally, card number 36, another favorite from the set, the Newsy Lalonde. And I listen, I love this card, and I'll show mine is a PSA 2, but look at the front. Now the back is another story, but look at the front of this card, like the centering, the nice even rounded corners, the color, like no creases. Let's see the front of yours.
Yeah, yours almost looks like a different blue to mine. So I got a 1, Jeremy, again here. So I have a 1 here, and then there must be something, because the back on this one, Jeremy, is pretty beat up. It's like a blackish, and I guess maybe these have to it probably has to do with it being like the last card of the set and maybe the way it was stored. But the back is pretty dark on mine here. So it's probably the worst back I have is actually in my favorite card here. So that's it.
Yeah, well, look at the back on mine. It's like it's paper loss.
When did you end up picking yours up, Jeremy? How
I bought I actually bought a complete set of 1910 C56 in 2006. I think I bought the set, and
okay.
it only had, I think only 2 or 3 of the cards were actually graded. Okay. And then I got the rest maybe it was more. I'd have to look. I don't remember exactly, but these I got graded because they're in the 1699 is when I got them graded. And over time, I've upgraded a few here and there. So it's on the set registry. I think it's number 8 or 9 on the set registry. So maybe it's 11 now. The grade point average, I believe, is like a 4, just over like 4.03 or something like that. I haven't checked my set registry in a couple of years now, probably. So I'm not even sure. Maybe not that long, maybe about a year, but I've had them for a long time and love them. I mean, they're just, listen, I had a big mistake here. Gen Z says, have you talked about the 54 Red Heart mantle yet? It's on the thumbnail for this episode. We haven't even talked about it yet. We're 5 minutes right now, actually, Oh, my bad. We are 5 minutes into overtime on the episode, so we're gonna have to go a little bit longer here. Let's talk about the Red Heart Mantle, but let's finish off these cards. We have a few more to show. Did you pull out a Babe Ruth card?
Yeah, I got my I got my one the one Gaudi I own. I got this. Yeah, I brought her. So this is mine here. I'm gonna trick you for a second, Jeremy. So this is the Babe Ruth Gaudi. Now it's authentic. Now you said you love cards with pinholes. This one here, buddy, it's got a little bit more of a
it's got a hole punch.
That's got a hole punch in it. So maybe they hung it on a Christmas tree or something. But hey, at the end of the day, it's still a Gaudi Ruth, and it's it's well centered. The red on it's good. So I've always wanted a Gaudi.
Well, keep it up. Here's my number 53, the yellow background version of the card. No pinhole, no hole punch. Thankfully, a card I've owned for a very long time now. I think I've had this card. Oh boy, I think I've had this card. Well, no, about over 10 years at least. I've had this card, and I absolutely love it. It's so nice, and again, on the buy a PSA 1 is what I'd have. What you would pay for a PSA 1 now is pretty much what I paid for this SGC 5.
Yeah,
10 years ago.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I mean, for this one here, I paid, I believe, just under, and I bought it about maybe 3 years ago, about 2 years ago, maybe. And I believe I paid like 40, maybe 4,600 for this year. And I think they've stayed about the same.
Yeah. I paid more than that for this, but a lot less than Yeah. Well, now a PSA 1 would probably sell for double or more than what yours is worth with the hole in it. So. Yeah, that makes sense. And it's a different card. This is the yellow version, which I think outsells the red version, but great cards. And it's nice that it's just cool to be able to show off some of these nice cards and enjoy them ourselves here together. Okay. The next one. Do you have a Bobby Orr rookie with you?
Oh, yeah. I got a nice one here. I got a nice one, Jeremy.
Pull it up. Let's see it.
Look at this guy. So this is the Topps test version Orr. So, they say limited to, I don't know, 100 and some, maybe 100 and some copies only in California. And you can tell that it has that white little strip, and the wood grain border is a little lighter than your traditional Orr. And the back is just English only. It looks like yours is a normal Orr. Yeah.
The Topps test it's a great card. It's one of those, it's kind of an oddball card because, I don't believe it was, distributed the way most sets were back in the day. And, but it's a card I've been aware of since I was a kid. I didn't even know that it actually existed. I'd never seen one until, the days of the internet came around. And, but what a cool card, and really neat. My copy is the PSA 5.5. It was, I recently sold my PSA 8 Bobby Orr rookie because I actually liked my 5.5 better. So I'm like, oh, all right, well then I'll just pocket the difference and keep the card and still have the card represented in my collection. I need a Bobby Orr rookie card in my collection, and I managed to make that happen. And this is just just to show it up a bit closer. Look at that. It's just so nice for a 5.5.
Absolutely. And this one I got a great deal on, Jeremy. If you look at it, I got it on an auction house, but they mislabeled it. So it just says it just says Bobby Orr. It doesn't advertise that it's a Topps test. So I think that's why I got such a great deal out of it. It's clearly a USA test, but yeah, they labeled it wrong.
Now, do you have the Stanley Cup hologram handy?
I don't, but I got a beat up version of that, but I got a little treat for you, Jeremy. That's a different version. Maybe if some people are getting bored of hockey. So this is a pretty rare one. This is the Vince Lombardi one. So sort of the football version of it. So that's the Vince Lombardi hologram. But the cool thing about this one, Jeremy, it's on the back. It's the owner's edition. So right there on the red, you can see it says owner's edition.
Yeah.
So that was only given to apparently players or someone affiliated with the team. So I don't know the pop count or anything on it, but I think it's just, it's cool that each sport sort of has their own hologram version. But that was
numbered out of 10,000, I believe, back in the day when Pro Set Football came out. And then the Stanley Cup hologram that I'm showing was numbered out of 5,000. And it's, as you said, the first serial numbered card. And this is a low number. This is 43 of 5,000. I kind of like the nice low number of the card as well.
That's a beast, Jeremy. What grade is that?
That's an 8. There's only, I think there's...
Is that the highest?
No, there's one 8.5. I know who owns it. I've brought him offers. He's like, you could offer me $1 million. I'm not selling. I'm like, oh my God. Okay. He's not selling his 8.5. Okay. And I think there's 3 8s now, 3 or 4 8s total. I don't remember the exact number. So it's very rare in this high grade.
Yeah, I think that was the only valuable card of that. Not what was it? 90-91 Pro set is
that's the card.
Is that the one right there? That's a monster grade in that card.
And then I also pulled out my autographed Gretzky rookie just because we were going to talk about them. And this I believe was signed in his rookie year, which I think is really cool because I know who got it autographed and the provenance is all there. It was the cameraman for Hockey Night in Canada. His name was Robert Thomas. And anyway, it's a whole story, but it's, the autograph. It doesn't, you're like, oh, that doesn't look like his autograph. Well, that was his autograph back then. And the card itself is pretty nice too. I don't know what it would grade. I had this slabbed myself and authenticated, and I kind of wish now that I would have got the card graded too, because it's actually a nice grade on the card's in nice condition. So
yeah, I love it. Yeah. I love that. Yeah, I need to add one of those to the collection, Jeremy. I'm gonna have to sell something.
Let's talk now about the Mickey Mantle card, the red heart that shows up on the thumbnail for this episode, because I put it on the thumbnail. We got to talk about it.
Yeah.
And it falls into your topic all about oddball type of cards and that. So listen, we're going to go for 5 more minutes here. Talk about your love for oddball cards and especially the red heart mantle, please.
Yeah, so I just find the oddball cards, Jeremy, they're a fun hunt and they're a fun read. So I'll go on, any blowout card forums or anything and just start looking at and I'll literally search, pre-rookie cards or rarest unknown cards of certain players, that type of searches, and see what comes up. And I just find, they're usually usually a fairly low entry point on them. You don't see a ton of them surface. They each sort of have their unique story to them. We talked about the Sinella and the Astra, but I mean, I could go on about, call them the land of misfit cards, whatever you want to call them. I could go on forever about them. I mean, there's so many. I mean, we got in hockey, there's the Royal Desserts, Howe, Laval Dairy, we've got Plants, Bellevos, there's the box bottom Lemieux, it's a true Lemieux rookie card. Yeah, that's a monster. No one really flexes that card, but I mean, that's a grail right there. I love that. I love
this card. To me, it's the unknown Lemieux rookie.
Yeah,
it's hand cut. Says it right there, hand cut. But the only way to get this was to hand cut it.
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing about box bottoms, Robbie, and everybody, is that these were meant to sit on top of something like a counter or another box below it. So they were often scratched and they had surface issues. So to find and this is the best box bottom in hockey, is the Lemieux. So to get one of these with a nice surface, unbelievable. Like I cherish this particular card. I love it.
Yeah, that's and I don't think there's too many of those around that I've seen that look like. What grade is that, Jeremy?
It's a PSA 9. I'm actually going to check the pop on it right now. It might be the highest grade.
Yeah, there's low pop. There's definitely not too many of those circulating for sure. The other one that's cool when you, if you like Lemieux, Jeremy, so everyone knows his 85 O-Pee-Chee. He's got his O-Pee-Chee and tops. But the other one that's a nice little play too is the scoring leaders Lemieux, which is in the same era. It's roughly I think you can pick them up for $400 or $500 in a high grade. And it's a Lemieux's rookie year too, so it's just a scoring leaders rookie Lemieux. I like that, yeah. But yeah, I mean, I could go on for a long time on oddball cards. Gretzky Belleville Bulls is another cool one, but people may be getting tired of hockey.
Heart.
So in football, you have there's the instant replay Marino rookie that's pretty cool. Dan Marino's got a police rookie card. There's some nice Steve Young early rookie cards too. Baseball, you got your Wheaties, Mantles, your Sinellas. I also like the Churchman Babe Ruth. Griffey's, you got your, what is it, the Bernardinos, they got the blue one and the platinum. The platinum's more rare. I also love, and someone mentioned in the chat, so we could wrap up and speak to it, the Red Heart mantle. So I think it was a 1954 issue. Was actually, it's weird, I don't know, distributed in dog food, so I don't really know what that means, but the image of them is pretty iconic on the card. I think it's just a gorgeous looking card, the pose, and again, that blue background reminds me of that 52 Topps mantle blue background. So there's just some parallels there. So I have that card in an OC version, sticking true to my collecting ability. So I didn't pay much for it, but you don't see them circulate too often. So I think the Red Heart's a really early iconic looking mantle card.
Nice. Well, awesome, man. All right. Well, we are 15 minutes into overtime, so we're going to wrap up. And thank you for joining, Robbie. Chat, as always, thank you for your comments, for your viewership, for being here. Appreciate that. Get your final comments in. Well, I'll read as many as I can. Jake Dahl says, yes, the Red Hearts were issued in bags of dog food in 1954. I love that. I think that's just so cool. Like because so many people bought dog food that didn't care about baseball cards. So how many of those actually survived? Pretty darn cool. Mark Santucci says 5 stars. Thank you very much. Nikola Tesla says, I seriously have like 100 plus oddball sets sitting in a couple of binders in the corners. Most are sheriffs. Yeah. Heard of those. Can't think of what they look like, but I've heard of those. GMOs, yeah, I heard $1 million is not much nowadays. It's a lot of money. Let's face it. Joe Pro says, breaking out the heavy artillery. Mark Santucci says, I'm not getting bored of hockey. Eric said I would give my entire collection for a mint Topps test or. Yeah, right on. Yankees fan. Now that was a show and tell. Thanks, Yankees fan. Nikola Tesla almost bought that Lemieux recently. PCs, Lemieux and Jagger. Vachon Foods from the 80s. I remember those cards. Thank you, Carlos. Thank you, Baz. Good convo, fellas. Appreciate that.
Yeah, sorry,
right.
Jeremy. One more that just jumped in my head.
Yeah.
For some, I haven't given any a basketball one, but there's a Drake's. I think it's Drake's Cakes has a Shaquille O'Neal rookie card in it. That's pretty cool. And sometimes they'll surface on eBay. You could actually see the Shaq card through the. I have one, and it's through the packaging, so it's like a cookie card, but it's a pretty it's a cool Shaquille O'Neal card.
Cool. I'm not familiar with that. Bobby Burrell says, most excellent show, boys. Truly enjoyed this one. Thank you, Bobby. All right. Well, let's wrap up. Robbie this time. Final words to you, and then we're going to wrap.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, Jeremy. Truly appreciate it. You've been taking me through the process, and the way you interview is absolutely fantastic. I was a little nervous coming on, but you made the process super enjoyable, and it was more of a conversation than anything. And thanks for all you do in the hobby, and just continue doing what you're doing and putting out the content, man. I think there's some big things ahead for you for sure.
I appreciate the kind words. Thank you for the encouragement. It's stuff like that does in part help keep me going. I'd probably do it anyway, but I do appreciate the kind words, and thank you for coming on. And again, chat, thank you so much for being here. As always, tomorrow night I'll be covering the hockey card auctions on PWCC, and then Monday night is MC Mondays Live, a new content partnership I have with Mike Kantz of MC Sports Cards, covering his bi-weekly auctions on eBay every second Monday, and Taking Stock with Dennis Zender is now every second Tuesday. The other week it'll be MC Mondays one week and Taking Stock the next week. And I'm kind of doing a show on a Monday or a Tuesday so I can hang out with my wife and have some evenings to myself as well. So thank you, Jake Dahl. Appreciate that. Nick Tesla, thank you. Chris J, appreciate that very much. With that, everybody, thank you for joining. And this episode of Sports Cards Live with our guest, Robbie Pastre, is now over.